All right. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We're also privileged to be here with DJ Genesis of Detroit, putting this whole thing together. And we have none other with us, the criminal attorney of the year. I must say he's a heavy hitter. His name is Calvin Johnson, and I'm welcome to bring him on the show. Calvin.
Hey man, I'm glad to be with you guys again. Of course, my name's Attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I have been a practicing Texas criminal defense attorney for the last 24, almost 25 years. I've done cases at the local, state, and federal level. And I'm just here to try to help the people understand what's going on in the Diddy trial, answer some of your questions, give some viewpoints, show people how to get in touch with me. I'm attorney Calvin D. Johnson at gmail.com. I can be reached at 214-565-5600. My website is theywon'tletmeout.com. So we're here with Watching the World 777, my man Mel, who attends court religiously every day in the Diddy trial. So we want to get his real life viewpoints, and then I'm going to add something to that.
All right. That's awesome. So, this week, we had the closing arguments from the prosecutors as well as the defense team. And believe it or not, the prosecutors came back for another hour and a half. Almost seemed like a new direct on this case. They really made their points, right?
Yes.
So we figured today we'll do something fun. We're going to, just to give you guys, our religious viewers all the time, we're going to try to defend this case at a high level to give you an idea of some of the points that may have been missed as far as the defense on this case. So we're going to dig into it and see how we can build out these arguments to show you how someone of Calvin's stature, a criminal defense attorney, how he would approach this case to help his client to win and not go to jail for some extended period of time. So, Calvin, first thing I would like to get into is uh, point number one, or criminal act number one, is racketeering. Charge number one. Could you break that down? What is racketeering?
Racketeering is basically you're creating a situation where you can participate in multiple criminal acts or a criminal act, and you're setting up a situation where you can do that on a continuous basis. And you're using your position as a person running the company or running the organization to be able to continue to do that. And that's what they're alleging that Puffy is basically doing. He's allowing people and to do the things that he needs to get done. He's asking people to do things for him that's going to benefit him, and it allows whatever illegal behavior to continue. So it's kind of what you're going to be doing when it comes to racketeering.
The government basically said all you need is a group of people conspiring together. Now, Shapiro, who is a top notch appellate judge, she's a heavy hitter. She broke it down this way: in order to have a real RICO, there would need to be a distinct other enterprise kind of acting along with Bad Boy Enterprise or what have you. How should we view that?
Well, basically, what it is you have Bad Boy, the company over here, and then you got Sean Combs, the individual over here, doing other things, and you're allowing Bad Boy, the company, to help Sean Combs, the individual, carry out illegal behavior, and they're doing that together. And when I say Sean Combs, you have the organization and you got Sean Combs, the individual. What kind of happens is Sean, of course, has access as a company person to be able on the individual side to direct folks to not just do stuff that benefit the company, but to personally engage in criminal behavior, attitudes, and crimes on the other side. He's using that to do both.
Okay, so you spark a big question with me. So let's say, for instance, I'm in upstate New York and we have a guy named Frankie the Butcher. He's a mob boss. He's running an enterprise in Manhattan that's involving deaths of individuals from his camp versus, let's say, the Gotti family, right? In this case, Diddy does not have any blood on his hands. The only thing he basically has on his hands is baby oil and Astroglide. No blood. There's no murders in this case. Why would he have to be charged with a RICO that often involves murders and go away for 30 years to life when he's actually done things like domestic violence and, low level crimes?
I think what's happening in this particular situation is they don't consider sex trafficking, kidnapping, and some of the other stuff as low-level crimes. Bribery, they don't consider those things as low-level crimes. The other part of the situation that people don't understand is the government, when it gets to the Fed level, they have what we call a point system. So depending on, and I don't have the point system in front of me right now, but depending on what you get charged with, the higher amount of your points, the more time you can get. That raises your range. So in a state case, I can go and negotiate a plea deal, and we may have everything from probation all the way up to 99 years to negotiate. But when I am in a federal case, let's say I got a federal case and it's kidnapping, and the points for kidnapping starts at 50. And then if it involves weapons or sex or the other stuff, then it adds additional points. Well, if the 50 number comes with a 10-year sentence, I can't go below that. So I don't have that 0 to 10 to negotiate on. Only thing I can negotiate is basically that 10 and on up. And the more criminal behavior you conduct and become involved in, the higher the number goes. And so that's why when you get charged federally, it's really, really tough because the number can really get up high.
Okay, so a question I have for you. Rumor has it that Diddy had a previous felony from a gun charge around 2008 or 2010. Would that affect the point system if that is true?
It does. A prior felony adds 3 points to your score, and your score will correlate with a sentencing range. And just to simplify it to you, let's say 1 point, and let's say 1 point gets you from 1 to 2 years, and let's say 2 points gets you from 2 to 4 years, and let's say 3 points gets you from 4 to 6 years. And so what happens is, and I'm just oversimplifying it, the higher number of points that you have, the more you could possibly get sentenced to, okay? And the 3 points for each felony creates a higher number for him. There's 1 point for a misdemeanor if you serve over 100 days, or there's 3 points for a felony if it's a felony conviction.
Okay, so another question. If he's charged with racketeering, what type of time is he looking at?
Well, it just kind of depends. And with that, it's a little harder to say, because what happens is when you get hit with the racketeering, then they start to go over the behavior that's in your racketeering. Did you use weapons? Have you had prior felonies? How many prior felonies you've had? And so that range, you really won't know the range until until you get the conviction, and then until they look at everything. In addition to that, felonies involving guns, sometimes if you have too many points, because of that, it even raises you higher. So it's a little difficult to tell at this point, but he could be looking at anywhere between 10 and 30 years, depending on the additional stuff that they add. Now, once sentencing happens, there's going to be a sentencing recommendation that comes down from what we call the Federal Probation Department. They interview the individual after he gets convicted, if he gets convicted. They go over his criminal history. They go over the actual thing that he got convicted of. And then they actually come back with a particular point and recommendation in terms of the points. And then the state and the defense argue about, is that number correct? For example, in addition to the point system, there's also time factors related. So let's say one of your felonies is 15 years old and they can't use it to add points to your score. Some of the felonies kind of fall off when it comes to the federal system in terms of adding points. I had a guy one time and he got lucky because the last case he had, he got 25 years on, and then of course, it's like 26 years later, he's in trouble again. Well, all of the prior felonies that he had, they could not use them because they fell out of the time range. And so he only ended up getting about 5 years for what he did. But if he had not have had that big sentence on the last one, and they would have been able to include some of the prior stuff he did, he would have been looking anywhere from 18 to 30 years. And so that's why those things can make a difference. And with Diddy, you're going to be able to kind of tell based on his prior convictions, as well as the additional behavior in the criminal behavior that he gets convicted of.
So you had mentioned his guns. They did not list that as a predicate act, but I do have a question. When they went to arrest him, the guns were found in the security room, and it seems that they came out of a safe that held these guns, but some of the guns had been defaced. The serial numbers had been scratched off. How does the federal government view that?
Well, they can't really 100% prove that it's his safe. They can't prove that he actually had custody of those guns. And so they will allege that during the case, but sometimes they will not be able to add that on as something that can get him points or put him in another sentencing grouping, which is higher. The defense attorneys like myself are going to say, hey, whatever you found there, you can't say that Mr. Combs used the gun, that those things belong to him. He had care, custody, and control of those particular weapons. You can't say 100% that these things were actually used to commit this crime. So as a defense attorney, I argue to keep the guns out of it because it makes your sentencing situation higher.
Okay, so let's go through the predicate acts. I'll just list them off, and then we'll go through one by one to see how you would fight this in court to save the life of your client. Number 1 is drug distribution. Number 2 is kidnapping. Number 3 is arson. Number 4 is bribery. Number 5 is sex trafficking. Number 6 is interstate transportation for prostitution. Number 7 is forced labor. And number 8 is witness tampering and obstruction. Those are the 8 predicate acts on the table for the jury to consider. So number 1 is drug distribution. I just want to tell you briefly what the prosecutor said. She says that one freak off, you could have 6 or 7 drugs, but you only need one drug to have a predicate act. She said you do not have to sell the drug to an individual to be drug distribution. You can give it to a friend, and that's against the law. She also said when it comes to this one predicate act, that there were drugs at every freak off, and there were hundreds of freak offs, and all you have to do is just choose 2, and you have racketeering. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, number 1, if they can prove those 2 things, that's a huge problem for Mr. Combs. If I'm the prosecution and I'm talking to the jury, if I made it that simple, that's going to be a huge problem for Mr. Combs to get around. But I'm a defense attorney. So what I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do with that, how I'm going to argue that situation. I'm going to say that Mr. Combs didn't give anybody anything. The people that were involved in the freak offs decided to take those drugs on their own. Now, even though I was present at the freak offs, I didn't distribute anything to anybody. I didn't go buy anything for anybody, and I did not make anybody take anything. At the end of the day, these are consenting adults who decided to do drugs and have sex. That's going to be the consistent argument that I make as Puffy Combs' attorney. That's what's going to happen, and that's the arguments that the defense should be making.
Throughout the trial, they tried to say, like in the case of maybe Jane, that Diddy gave her ecstasy for the very first time. How does that affect it?
Well, see, that's going to be another argument for the state. Now, of course, the state is going to allege that, and that will cause, once again, Mr. Combs, a huge problem. But for me, if that's going to be a situation upon which where 2 consenting adults were together and one decided that they wanted to do drugs, number 1. Number 2, can you trust the veracity of Jane's testimony? Jane has been given a deal to make sure that she doesn't go to jail. she has to jump up here and say that somebody made her take this particular drug. The truth of the matter is, in these types of situations, if I'm arguing for Mr. Combs, is that people decide to partake in drugs. Drugs are not, a lot of these people are not one time, that's my only time, it's my first time using. This person probably already had some kind of addiction to drugs. They wanted to take the drugs. They took those drugs on their own, if there were any drugs at all. And so that's the argument that I'm going to make. I'm going to say, hey, look, we got somebody up here possibly hooked on drugs. That is going to make an argument that Mr. Combs made her take a particular drugs when we know that this particular individual has done drugs before. And as being an addict, when you know how addicts do, they decide that they want to take the drugs. Nobody has to make them do anything if there were any drugs, if she's even telling the truth about that. And so that's the argument that I'm going to make for Mr. Combs. It's on him. Now, if the government can prove and the jury thinks that young lady is trustworthy, that's a huge problem for Mr. Combs, because it makes it look like that you're providing her with an illegal drug. You made her take an illegal drug, and therefore you're distributing it. But if I'm Mr. Combs, I argue that that's not true, and she's only saying that because she's getting a deal. That's what I'm going to argue.
Brendan Paul took the stand. He was the gentleman that was arrested right around the same time that Diddy was arrested. He testified that the amount of drugs that he was arrested with were for personal use for Sean Diddy Combs. It wasn't some elaborate amount that you could distribute. How does that help the defense?
It helps the defense greatly, because I'm going to say this particular individual had enough drugs really for one person to use, or for one person to use over an extended period of time. Those drugs were for personal use. And that's the argument that I'm going to make. These things were not being distributed. It was enough for that particular person to use for that day or a couple of extended days. And so what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to say, hey, look, the amounts that they found is not something where I'm moving drugs to either sell or get people to do things. There was just enough drugs for somebody's personal use. And that's what that person was doing.
The government pulled out a chart, and in that chart, they show this criminal enterprise, Combs Enterprise, and they said, do not get it misconstrued with Combs Enterprises, which is the official corporation with New York State. In the chart, they show that Capricorn Clark, his chief of staff, also known as KK, there are times where she has Jane, and during a text message, she's saying, pick up these drugs from LA before you leave and fly to Miami and bring them. Jane says, I'm really nervous. Is this safe? And KK says, yeah, it's safe. I've done it many times. What do you think about that?
Now, let me tell you something, and that's the thing, right? So you got one situation where she's admitting that she has gotten drugs and transported them on several occasions across country. But can you really 100% attribute that to Mr. Combs? She is deciding to partake in an illegal act. We don't know what her situation is in terms of her addictions. We don't know what she was getting out of it when we start talking about that. And in addition to that, like I said before, she's making a decision to get somebody to do something. But is that 100% for the benefit of Mr. Combs, or does she have something else going on somewhere else? That's what I'm going to argue. But once again, if the jury believes that she was having these things for Mr. Combs and she was moving these drugs for Mr. Combs, that's a problem. But I'm going to argue vehemently that she probably has or could have her own addictions, and she could have been moving those things for herself.
Okay, very good. Predicate Act number 2 is kidnapping. There's 3 instances we need to briefly go through. Number 1 is Cassie Ventura. Allegedly, Diddy had punched her in the face. She had some major bruising, and she had an event coming up, what have you. She said she wanted to go to the house. Diddy sent her to a hotel room so that no one would see her and substantiate what could have happened. They brought her food the entire time. They, checked on her and so forth. Is that kidnapping?
Did they always have somebody at the door? Did it make sure that she did not leave? Did she say that?
Was not said, no.
Well, that's the problem, because if that was not said, You're just going somewhere. Number one, you also have the benefit of not wanting to be seen in the public. You are a celebrity, you're a star, you don't want to go out with a black eye. If he placed you somewhere and you didn't go somewhere for a week, but he didn't tell you you couldn't leave, or he didn't put somebody that physically put you in a situation where you couldn't leave, you can't prove kidnapping in that situation. Or you got to remember, the state has the burden beyond a reasonable doubt to prove that that's kidnapping. There's reasonable doubt if there's nobody at the door saying that she has to stay there, because the average person, if they want to leave, they're going to be able to walk out that door. So that's how I would make my reasonable doubt argument for Puffy. On the flip side, there is an argument to be made that, hey, you can't go anywhere because people know that you're with Puffy, and he probably has something to do with you getting hit in your eye. But at the same time, that's not really kidnapping, because you could leave if you wanted to. You have free will to leave. If he don't have somebody locked, some big giant bodyguard at the door making sure that you stay there, then you have free will to be able to get up out of there if you want to.
They painted a picture like she was being monitored, but they did not say someone was posted at the door. So I'm not exactly sure how that transcribes.
And see, that's the thing. If you're the state, you got to make sure that that's clear to the jury. You got to make sure as a state that, hey, if this young lady is being kept in this place, that we understand as a jury that she didn't leave, she couldn't leave, or there was consequences for her leaving or even attempting to leave. Did she even attempt to leave?
Okay.
That's an argument you can make.
That's a good argument. Great. It's so great to have you on board breaking this down. There's a lot of people in the building. Can you please just tell them who you are and where they can find you?
I'm attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I've been a practicing criminal defense attorney for the last 24 years, going on into my 25th year. I have represented thousands of clients, probably over the last 20 years, probably 5,000, 6,000 different clients. I've been to federal courts at least 30, 40, 50 times on cases. I do state, local, and federal criminal defense. I'm located in Dallas, Texas. My website is theywon'tletmeout.com, and my email is attorneycalvindjohnson.com at gmail.com, and my phone number is 214-565-5600. You can reach me there if you have questions. I do criminal defense in the Texas area, but I am licensed in other areas and other federal courts in the state of Texas, and I can actually practice in other places as well, depending on the situations.
I am Mel with Watching the World. I've been covering Diddy's case from the main courtroom every day for jury selection and also throughout 7 weeks of trial. I've been taking notes every day and bringing back consistent news to you guys. And Calvin and I have been breaking it down consistently every week, what we have heard and understand to be true about this particular case. Guys, please hit the like button. If you're on DJ Genesis' side of things, like the button, give her a lot of support. She works hard to bring you high caliber people every day. She's consistent with it. Show some love and support. And if you're on this side, we're Watching the World, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe if you like what you're hearing. So let's get into the second kidnapping. It involves Capricorn Clark. Diddy had hired Kid Cudi, who was a friend, to produce an album for his side chick or girlfriend, Cassie. Okay. Kid Cudi started to get intimate with her, and Diddy found out about it 5:30 in the morning. He goes over to Capricorn Clark's house, banging on the door. They painted a picture. Maybe he was hitting her with the butt of the gun. Who knows? She opens the door, and Diddy says, why you didn't tell me, Kid Cudi? Get your clothes on. We're going to go kill this in. And then they proceed to go to Kid Cudi's house. She's in the car outside the house. She calls Cassie, says Diddy's inside of Kid Cudi's house. Kid Cudi's on speakerphone. He hears it. He calls Diddy. He's like, you in my house, in? He rushes over there. They're painting a picture that this is kidnapping because Capricorn was forced at gunpoint to come to Kid Cudi's house. The defense showed that when there's no police report mentioning a gun, or when Capricorn told Cassie and Kid Cudi that he was in the house, she never mentioned a gun. She only mentioned it closer to this trial. What are your thoughts?
Of course, I'm going to argue, number one, that there wasn't a gun, and she would always talk about it. I always tell jurors, when you have something of a violent nature, whether it be a gun or knife or machete, those typically are the first things you mention when you start talking about somebody holding me against my will or somebody attacking me. You're going to mention the weapon, because if it's just their body, there's no fear in it. There's no illustration and there's no sense of urgency. When somebody pulls up with me on their fist and tell me to do something, I'm like, whatever. But if they got a gun, if they got a machete, or they got a knife, or they got a pistol or a rock or some brass knuckles, I'm going to mention those things, because those things are going to encourage me to do what I'm told. In this situation, without a gun, you're just an employee going over to somebody's house because you've been told to go over there. There's no kidnapping there. And in addition to that, you didn't mention the gun until close to the trial. When they interviewed you before, when you didn't have a deal, you didn't even mention a gun. Now, all of a sudden, you want to say you have a gun. To me, that's reasonable doubt. I'm going to make the argument that it's reasonable doubt. Number one, that you're probably not telling the truth because it's advantageous for you to lie. Number two, this isn't the same story you told all the time. Now, because Puffy's at trial, now there's a gun involved.
When they ask her about why she didn't leave, she says, "Oh, I'm afraid to go into the woods because there's mountain lions." So she mentioned being afraid of mountain lions, but never mentioned a gun.
Well, see, those are the things that I'm saying. You got to start thinking about how these folks are testifying. And then one of my overall arguments that I make, listen, let's be honest. Mr. Combs is a wealthy billionaire. A lot of the people that work for him, they live check to check, they live month to month. When the government comes to them, they don't have an opportunity to fight. They literally have to coalesce. And what you have here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is you have the federal government stepping on their throats, and they didn't have any air to breathe in the first place because they didn't have any money. So they're just capitulating, they're bending and they're bowing, and they're going down to their knees because they have to. What's the alternative? If the government comes to you and tells you to testify and you say no, and they say, well, we're going to charge you in a RICO, and you don't have $1 million or $2 or $3 million for a lawyer, it can destroy your life, destroy your family, and take whatever resources you have. So I'm going to get up on this stand and I'm going to say what they tell me to say so that I don't get in the situation that Mr. Combs is, because I ain't got money like him. So that's what I'm going to argue to a jury, and when it comes to believability of particular witnesses.
The third point of kidnapping happened in New York. Diddy had borrowed 3 pieces of jewelry from Jacob the jeweler. It was a Jesus piece, diamond necklace, a bracelet, and a watch.
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn Clark was in charge of bringing it to an event. She gets to the airport. She can't find the pieces. She calls back to 1440 Broadway in Manhattan, and she tells everybody, lock the building down. Let's search everybody for these items. She goes back to the building. They can't find the items. One of Diddy's security guards take her, I believe it was Uncle Paulie. He starts to check her out now. He takes her back to her apartment in Queens, where she lives with a roommate, searches the entire apartment. They can't find the jewelry. He says, sit tight. I'm going to come back in the morning to get you. He comes and pick her up, take her to 1440 Broadway. And at the time, they're in between 2 buildings. The new building is under construction. That's the building that he takes her to. She says that they go through the front door and they lock them in the building from the outside. So that's the first point that everybody in the room is like, oh my goodness. She says they go upstairs to the 6th floor. The elevator opens. There's a wide man about 5 times her size sitting at a table smoking like a freight train. And he says, if you don't pass this lie detector test, B, we're going to throw you in the East River. And she gets nervous. She starts taking 1 or 2. She does not pass. He says, you better calm down or else you're going to end up in the East River. She says she felt petrified. Is this necessarily a problem when it comes to kidnapping?
Well, see, this is the thing that you got to be careful about that. So after that, does Capricorn Clark continue to work for Mr. Combs?
Yes.
That would concern me. Don't get me wrong, but when somebody threatens my life, threatens to throw me into a river, The minute that I calm this little situation down, I'm probably not going to be working for that individual anymore, number one. Number two, if that did happen, that does cause a problem, because at that point you're holding somebody against their will. But once again, um, can she identify the people that were involved in and this happening? Do they have records showing that at that time this is what happened, and this is where her phone was, and this is where she was located? Was there any testimony about that?
No. But one thing that the defense did point out is that she says it happened for 5 days in a row. The Paulie guy would take her home, bring her back. And so he compared it to the jurors. He says, we have you guys here for weeks coming in every day, but you get to go home at night and come back the next day. Is that kidnapping? I thought that was a very good point. Point number two, there's no police reports for any of this. Your turn.
That's not kidnapping then, because if you get to leave and come back, you can come back. Hell, you just basically working extended hours, if that's the situation, number one. Number two, why are you trying to turn Puffy into the Big Red from the Five Heartbeats? That's basically what you're trying to do. If you don't know what I'm referencing, it's a movie. Guy got hanged out of a window because of some things, but that's basically what she's trying to make him look like. But in that situation, was there a situation where you and I can be somewhere for 5 days and nobody know where we're at? No, somebody's going to come looking for us, number one. Number two, it's not kidnapping if you get to go home and back to work every day. You got the freedom to leave. You have the freedom to make a report. You have the freedom to tell somebody, hey, man, these people are trying to kill me. And so somebody who threatened to throw you into the East River, you went there, left, and then came back after they said that they were going to throw you in the East River? Like Chris Carter would say, come on, man. Wait, really? So that's what I'm going to argue if I'm the defense attorney.
She testified that this happened for 5 days, and then come Monday, she went right back to her regular job. Diddy never said anything about it, never gave an indication that he knew about these lie detector tests or anything of the sort. What do you think?
Number one, they got to make sure that he's connected to it, number one. Number two, we're talking some jewelry. We're not talking a chain from Zales or Pearson Pagoda. We're talking jewelry probably that's worth $500,000, $1 million. If somebody you worked with could possibly take in $500,000, $250,000, or $1 million worth of jewelry, if you're working for me, yeah, I'm bringing you in here and I'm going to make you take some lie detector tests and I'm going to watch you like a hawk. Because if that situation occurs, then I'm on the hook as Puffy for $500,000 or $1 million worth of jewelry to somebody who's going to expect payment. And if you're my employee that was tasked with the ability and the duty to watch those particular pieces of equipment or jewelry, of course I can bring you in and look at you like a hawk and ask you a bunch of questions. But if you're going home at night, I'm not kidnapping you. I'm just making sure that you go from home to work, that you're not dropping anything off. I'm trying to make sure I get my jewelry back. Even if I'm connected to that, the people that work for Puffy, their responsibilities are to make sure that they try to recoup whatever's lost. That's not kidnapping in my eyes.
Predicate Act number 3 is arson. So basically, we had the whole situation we started talking about with Kid Cudi. After the event where Capricorn Clark goes with Diddy to the house of Kid Cudi, a couple days later, there's a fire involving Kid Cudi's black Porsche. Someone came in and cut a hole in the top, dropped a Molotov cocktail in. It did not detonate as they expected because there was a silk piece of cloth that was put in to block the liquid fuel. Mm-hmm. It fell out and caused the gas to come out much quicker. And so it did not cause the house to catch on fire and the other cars. The arson detective said this was a targeted event because the car was close to the house and there were 2 cars behind it. So you couldn't see that from the road. Someone would have had to came in. Now, here's the key part about this. When they did the DNA test, it came back to a female's DNA. And also, they found 2 fingerprints that came off of the bottle. There was a 40-ounce Old English bottle of beer that they put the gas in. However, those fingerprints went missing. So, what are your thoughts of how they could tie this to Diddy when it's actually a woman's DNA?
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say that they can't tie to Diddy. Diddy's not a woman. And number one, let's be honest. We know how these rappers are. We know how these rappers and entertainers and celebrities are. They got plenty of women that they talk to. When you think about it, even Kid Cudi himself is talking to Cassie when he know Cassie is still talking to Diddy. So a lot of these guys are playboys, and a lot of them have a lot of disgruntled women that want to get back at them. Who's to say that this wasn't a disgruntled woman who decided to break in his house and set his stuff on fire? Because nothing is connecting anybody connected with Sean Combs, Bad Boy Records, or Bad Boy Entertainment to say we did anything. So to me, that's not beyond a reasonable doubt. There's reasonable doubt there. So the jury should not find him guilty of arson because they can't prove that Sean himself or anybody connected to Sean put this thing on fire. In addition to that, it's particularly when you look at the DNA came back to some woman. So when you think about it, it's easy to surmise if you are a regular individual that it is reasonable that a disgruntled woman could have went in there and set that thing on fire like anybody else could. So that's the argument that I'm going to make there.
Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to pause before we get into the number 4 bribery. But in the comments, people are going crazy. But I want to make it clear, we promised to do a defense show for Diddy because we have a criminal defense attorney present with us. So this is a good day for us to have a criminal defense attorney give you insight of how he would represent his client if Diddy was his client. So keep that in mind as people in the audience are really going crazy. All right. Number 4 is bribery. Okay. So what are we talking about with bribery? Well, in the video that came out with CNN, we see Diddy and what happened, what transpired throughout this event. Mm-hmm. One of the security guards came in at 2:00 that day. His name was Eddie Garcia, and he started to preside over what had occurred. So he received a call from Christina Coram and basically said that her boss was really drunk. He did something he regretted. He's not sure what he did because he was so out of it, and they wanted to see the video. Eddie, being a noble man at the time, said, "I can't do that. That's against policy." As the day went on, he did send an email to the higher ups at his company to let them know what happened. Christina Coram then comes to the lobby and she kind of makes an offer to him that if he complies, they're going to do something great on his behalf. Then later, Diddy reaches out. This guy, Eddie Garcia, still holding his ground. Then, Diddy reaches out to him and kind of makes some offers. Well, even though Eddie did not want to make this video go away, his higher up, his manager, said we can make it go away for $50,000. So Eddie went back. He had the number. He said somehow they got his cell number. He didn't know how Christina Coram got his cell number. He reached back out to them, and Diddy was so elated that he would get rid of the video. And he said, "Eddie, you're my angel." That was his new nickname. So the manager proceeded to get rid of the video. They gave Diddy the original copy of some sort, and Diddy gave them a place to come to a hotel where Eddie showed up to get the $50,000, but also to give him the only copy of this video, and they deleted the rest. Now, what are your thoughts as far as bribery? Because they said that Diddy actually gave them $100,000. He pulled out a money machine, counted that $100,000 out in front of him. He said that when he was leaving, they had to call his car because it was parked, and said Diddy also called his car. So then he felt like Diddy was going to follow him. He was really nervous. So all of this is happening. Do we have a case of bribery?
I'm gonna argue that we possibly could, but we possibly may not. I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna argue that we may not. Did anyone make a police report of the incident at the hotel? No. Did Cassie make a police report at the incident at the hotel? No. Does the hotel have a duty to report an assault on its premises? A corporate duty, yes, but do they have a duty with the public? Was there an existing case at the time that this issue happened? No. This literally was money to avoid a public relations disaster. Now, I will tell you as a criminal defense attorney, Puffy assaulted Cassie. And in my eyes, anybody that assaults somebody like that, they probably should go to jail. But as a defense attorney at the time, and if we're just discussing the case per se, and if there was bribery, there are a lot of situations where owners of companies pay money to make sure that things don't get released. And to be honest with you, there was no crime that had been reported by Cassie. There was no crime that had been reported by anybody else. There was no crime that was reported by the hotel. And you have to remember, what did Puffy ask for? He didn't ask for them to not call the police. He just asked them for the tape. Now, if he asked them to not call the police, don't report this, I'll pay you all of this money, then, and I specifically say, do not cause a criminal case, do not report this to the authorities, do not, if I'm saying that is one thing, but if I'm trying to say, don't let this get out, let me pay you for that, I'll give you some money for that, is that actually bribery? It's not really bribery, to be honest with you. Now, in the alternative, if Mr. Combs is saying, don't report this, I'll give you $50,000. Don't let the authorities find out about this, I'll give you $50,000. Don't call the police, I'll give you $50,000. So that's different. In my eyes, I'm paying you for something that you have that I don't want to get out. But right now, when you think about it, there was no crime reported. There was no crime reported by Cassie. And depending on what Puffy was asking for when he gave them that money, that's going to be very, very, very important, because we have plenty of situations where people have bought things just so that they don't get out. But is that a crime?
Okay, so let's litigate it a little bit more. Diddy had requested that Eddie Garcia sign an NDA, and if I'm not mistaken, it was under Combs Enterprises letterhead. What are your thoughts?
If I'm making an argument for Mr. Combs, yes, he signed an NDA, but he's signing an NDA because as a public relations matter, I don't want to get this out. Now, if I have in that NDA that I want to prevent criminal charges, I want to prevent you from going to the authorities, I want to prevent you from doing all of this other stuff, yeah, then of course that's different. But if I'm a private individual working for a private company and I sign an NDA that this stuff doesn't get out, that's the argument that I'm going to make as a criminal defense attorney. Now, some people view this differently. Some people are going to go, the fact that he paid for it alone is bribery. But it depends to me as an individual, why am I giving you this money? Am I giving you this money to keep this thing from being reported to the authorities? Am I giving this money because I don't want a crime for me to get convicted of a criminal offense? Am I giving you this money just because as a public relations matter, I don't want this to get out?
So here's an issue that I noticed just from being in the courtroom myself, and the defense really didn't hit it. So I wanted to see your take. In the video where Cassie is beaten, there's a security guard named Israel Flores that comes out of the elevator, and you can see him smiling. He's the one that actually takes a video of the original video because he said he wanted to take it and show it to his wife. And that's the video that would ultimately got out. But he testified on the stand, and I was in the main courtroom. I saw him with my own eyes. He said he was a security guard at the time. He later became an officer. Okay, so keep that in mind. in closing arguments, when they're going through the video, the prosecutor is saying, look at Officer Flores coming out of the elevator. He's not an officer at the time. He's actually just a security guard. So to me, if they're arguing bribery, they should have been honest and said, here's the security guard coming out of the elevator. But I counted 8 times where she said, here, Officer Flores walks out of the elevator. Here, Officer Flores. I almost felt like she was doing it by design. Here, Officer Flores is talking to Diddy. Here, Officer. You see what I'm saying? So, what are your thoughts on that? Does that make a difference?
Oh, she was making it. She was doing it by design, and that's what they do. That's what happens. So security officers, believe it or not, security officers that work for private companies, they really don't have like a duty to report something that happens on the premises. They really work for the company. They don't work for a public entity. And the deal is, it's not semantics between a security officer and the public. If you're a public official, you have a duty to report. So if I'm a police officer and I witness a crime, I have a duty to report that crime. If I do not report that crime, it is a crime within itself. That's why when you have situations that happen with kids at school and a counselor sees some bruising, she calls CPS not because she always wants to, because she knows that she can get charged with a crime, because as a public employee, a public official, she has to report that. A private security guard does not have the same responsibilities as a police officer. They are a private security guard. A police officer's allegiances and responsibilities and duties lie to the citizens and the state and the particular public entity who's paying them. A security officer, on the flip side, they have a duty to the company and the corporation or the particular entity that is paying them. So as a defense attorney, I'm going to argue that that tape itself, that's a private tape. That's a tape from that company. There's no bribery there because he is an employee of a private company. And this is an agreement between a private citizen and a private company. It is not an agreement between a private individual and a public employee, public entity, a public organization, because that particular hotel is a private hotel that hired security that does not work for the public. What do security guards do? Security guards, they ensure what? That stuff doesn't happen on the property that they are contracted to work on. And it becomes more of an internal matter for that particular hotel chain, that whatever they got to do internally, they get to decide if they're going to A, handle it internally, or B, decide if they're going to report it to the public, to the authorities. They have no duty and responsibility to report that to the authorities if they don't want to.
Okay, so one of my schoolmates is in the building, James Martin, Just the Facts. He says obstruction of justice, paying someone to withhold, conceal, or destroy potential evidence, especially video surveillance, interferes with the integrity of an ongoing or foreseeable investigation.
Well, this is the argument. Is it an ongoing or foreseeable investigation? Number one, it's not ongoing at the time that it happened, because nobody called the police. Cassie didn't call the police. The particular entity didn't call the police. And we don't know if there was going to be an investigation at all. We just don't know that. And so there's going to be the argument on the foreseeability of the part of that statement. And it was not ongoing at the time that it happened. There was no investigation because nobody reported it to the authorities. Now there is an internal look at it. There's an internal look at it from the company standpoint, but there's no public investigation. It's a private company. That's what I'm going to argue.
Okay, my close friend from the courthouse, every day, that girl Henny, guys, go follow her on her channel, excellent channel. She says, questions, there was a clause to notify the company before talking to law enforcement so they can prevent the breach or get protection orders. Sound like that may be a problem in that an issue. Is that an issue?
It could be an issue. It could be an issue because in that situation, you're trying to and somehow maybe interfere with that particular investigation that's going to happen. But when it comes to notifying, once again, that's a private company talking to a private individual. So if they want to know, hey man, if somebody asking about this, I just need to know. So there's a bit of an argument there that could be something that could change the answer to that. Of course, the state's going to argue, hey, that's something that goes above and beyond being a private matter between an individual and a company, because now when law enforcement is asking about it, you're trying to make sure that you get a heads up. Now, the other argument to that is, I just want to know if they're looking at me. That doesn't mean that I'm not asking you to lie for me. I'm not asking for you to burn the tape up. I'm not asking you for not to give them tape. I just want to know if they call them.
I am Miss Taylor makes a good point. She says, isn't that the reason why the hotel gave Cassie 10 million?
Exactly. Because they on a civil side, not on a criminal side, they have civil liability to make sure she's safe. And they have civil liability upon which, where if they don't do A, B, and C like reported, that they may have a duty to her. And they decided that they were not going to report it, which they don't have to. But she felt like that they probably should have reported it because they have to ensure the safety of their own guests so they can be sued. But that's in civil court. This criminal court.
Tyler Durden is really going in. Thank you for all your participation. Guys, please like the video so we can bring more people in the building to interact with, get their ideas. Tyler says, New York law defines the security guard's care responsibilities as a deterrence, observation, detection, and or reporting of incidents in order to prevent any unlawful or unauthorized activity.
I get that part of it. But once again, you have to start thinking about the responsibility that particular person has for the company as opposed to the state. And we understand that security guards are licensed by the state of New York, and it is their core responsibility when certain things happen. But when you say reporting incidents in order to prevent any unlawful or unauthorized activity, then they have a lot of leeway when it comes to that. Like, for example, if I'm a security guard at a nightclub and I see two guys punch each other and I see the guy who punched the guy first, do I always call that in? No, I don't always call that in. I think security guards in New York have a lot of leeway to either report or not report. That's what I'm going to argue as a defense attorney. Now, of course, like you said, today's show is about making plausible arguments for Puffy Combs when we go down this list about what he did or what he didn't do and what the requirements are to meet this RICO. As his defense attorney, I'm going to make the argument that the security guards have the leeway to decide what is unlawful or unauthorized activity, and they can choose to report it based on if they think it's unlawful or think it's unauthorized. And that's just that. And so I'm going to make that argument. Now, will all of my arguments hit home? No, they will not. But I'm just, as a defense attorney, we only get, the clients come as they are, right? So things have already happened. We didn't get to choose how they did what they did. We didn't get to choose how far they went or how far they did not go. But I'm going to make the argument that the security officers didn't have to report that. That's what I'm going to do. And more importantly, Cassie didn't want it reported, or she would have reported it herself. And the company that they work for, if they wanted to report it, they would have reported it. I'm pretty sure he talked to some higher up and they said, hey, what do you want me to do? And if they tell him now, we're going to leave it alone, because a lot of these private companies, believe it or not, a lot of these private companies, they like to give their guests the ability to remain kind of in the shadows sometimes. They don't want everybody knowing where you stay and what you do while you're there. That's what hotels are for, to be honest with you. For a lot of folks, they don't want information shared. They don't want sometimes what they're doing there to get out to the general public. And so you have a situation where you got Mr. Combs as a customer, Cassie as a customer. Maybe these two individuals didn't want that to get out. And they have an obligation more to their clients that are at that hotel as opposed to the general public, based on their relationships created by Puffy and that particular company when they rent that room there. That's the argument that I'm going to make.
Okay, Tyler Durden, just so you know, when it comes to the event we're discussing, it happened in Los Angeles, not New York. So it would be Los Angeles law. It was the Intercontinental Hotel in LA. All right, so we're going to get into the next two predicate acts, which is number 5 and number 6. They go hand in hand. Number 5, sex trafficking. Number 6, interstate transportation for prostitution. So, number 5, what is sex trafficking?
Sex trafficking is moving a person across state lines for the purposes of sex or or sexually related activities, right? So if I go from New York to Dallas, New York to New Jersey, New York to California, New York to Florida, another country into this country, that's basically considered sex trafficking. And that I'm moving these individuals with the purpose of participating in some sexual act or sexual behaviors.
Okay, so number 6 is interstate transportation for prostitution. What's the difference?
Or interstate is it basically. The other thing is what you can do, and sometimes you don't leave a state. Let's say you're in a state and you go from Dallas to Houston. And so the purposes of prostitution, which means you're traveling from one place to another to be able to participate in prostitution. So in Texas, we have 3 of the 4 biggest metropolitan areas in the country. We have Dallas and Houston. So we have a lot of situations here in the state of Texas where you will have a pimp in Dallas go to Houston, send somebody to Houston, and they consider that sex trafficking. And so when you start moving people with the purposes of engaging in acts for money, then that can be considered trafficking.
Okay, so when it comes to number 5, we're going to really unpack it now. And I'm going to give you 3 different scenarios because the government showed all 3. Number 1 was sex trafficking with force. Does the video, Cassie came into court, she says that Jules basically was in the room and she was trying to leave early from this freak off and he was dragging her back, so forth, to the room. Does that define force in sex trafficking?
Well, see, then that could be force. But is he bringing her back in the room to participate in sex, or is he bringing her back in the room to be able to, that he just wants her back in the room? And then in addition to that, is she having sex with him? She's having sex with somebody else, number 1. So I'm going to try to make that argument if I'm him. And then number 2, that's the argument that I'm going to make. She was already willingly participating in the sexual act with this particular individual. Now, the problem with that one is when you see the video and he does what he does to her and tries to drags her back down the hallway, that's an issue because that is one of the things that's going to hurt Puffy. I think that's his biggest challenge. That's why they wanted that video in here. That one's going to be a very, very hard one to get around. Now, as the defense team, I'm going to say repeatedly, there's text messages of Cassie wanting to participate in these freak-offs. Yeah, she's actually enthusiastic about it at times, and she definitely wants to participate in these freak-offs, right? She's constantly talking about wanting to do that, trying to do that, sounding excited about doing it. And so that's one thing that I'm going to argue if I'm the defense. But the video of Puffy Combs dragging her and kicking her and pulling her back down the hall, that's going to be a hard one for jurors to get past. And to me, that's one of his biggest challenges even though Cassie on other occasions had looked like she was either enthusiastic or wholeheartedly agreed with the freak-offs. But they only have to show one instance where it was done. And I think that's one of the instances that Sean is going to struggle with.
My girl Marie says he did not even bring her more than a few feet, though, not all the way down the hallway.
It doesn't have to be that. The fact that he's trying to pull her back in there, and the fact that she obviously wants to leave, and then the behavior of him kicking her like he did, that's a huge problem for him. Because when you look at it, sometimes, hey, you got somebody leaving the room, he could say, oh, I just didn't want her to, she didn't have any clothes on, I didn't want her to run out of there, I didn't want her. But when you kick somebody and you drag them back in, he tried to kick her head like a football. A jury is going to see that, and there's going to be a huge problem.
Shanicia says, don't forget the text messages after the incident she blamed on the drugs. So basically, the argument was he had gotten hold of some bad drugs that day. That's why he was turned all the way up.
And see, that's the thing, too. Whether he's on drugs or not, if he takes those drugs voluntarily, even if they're bad, the responsibility of everything that happens after that is on him. Sometimes people, oh, I was high, that's why I did that. But if you made a realistic decision where, hey, I'm on cocaine, I'm gonna take this cocaine, but instead somebody snuck some meth or some fentanyl in there or some PCP in there and it drove you crazy, you can't then say, well, they slipped something in there, I didn't know what I was taking. But you knew you were taking a drug. So there's no excuses. And so when it comes down to it, when you look at it, there's no way that he's going to be able to skirt that domestic violence of kicking her and trying to drag her back in the room. And what people are going to do, and I'm just keeping it real, they're going to correlate the fact that he was physically abusive to her in that video to what's going on in that room. Because they're going to make it seem like, hey, if she tried to leave, which she did, look what happened when she tried to leave. And this is when he knew he was in the hallway. Imagine what he's going to do behind closed doors. That's the way a jury is going to think. And so for me, this is a huge problem for Mr. Combs.
Okay, so you already defined what is sex trafficking, but it appears that someone must have missed it. So can you just explain that again?
Taking people across state lines from one place to another for the purposes of sex or sexually related activities. So if I'm taking a person from Dallas to New York to have sex, that's sex trafficking. If I'm moving a person from Dallas to New Orleans, that's sex trafficking. I'm moving a person across state lines. The state lines make it a federal case for the purposes of sex. And that's what sex trafficking is. Now, of course, Puffy is going to make the argument, and I think his defense team should make the argument that these are just consenting adults. Once some guys work for escort service, an escort service is not illegal. You can pay somebody to escort you to an event, to a dance, or for an evening. It becomes illegal when that turns into sex, or if there's 100% understanding that I'm paying you for sex instead of your company. There are a lot of escort services, but when you start talking about sexual activity and there is a history and a track of sexual activity based on the situations with the escorts, then that's a problem.
I have a question real quick. So I know they keep talking about this event in the hotel where they got into the fight and everything like that. He dragged her. Now, did they bring up Mel? Did they bring up the fact that he had money in this bag and that his cell phone was in the bag that she was trying to steal or take, and that could be partially why he got so upset, because she tried to take the money that and the drugs that was in the bag?
I think that's a mixture of an online rumor, so that's why I wouldn't bring that one up.
Okay, so that's not a true story. Okay, that was just one.
Nobody testified to that, right?
Israel did say that he tried to bribe him with money, but the defense basically said the guy's out there with his towel on, so he didn't have any money on him. Although at another point during the closing arguments, they tried to say when he went back to the room, Diddy offered him money. So it was never really a clear cut thing. They didn't build it out the way they should have. So as far as sex trafficking, we just covered the force, and that girl Henny said wasn't a case about domestic violence. This is a case about force. Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on to fraud?
Well, when it comes to force, and that's the thing, when you have somebody grabbing you, pulling you back into a room, the natural person or the average person is going to say, you were forcing her back into this room. We know that there's a freak off going back in the room. We know a freak off is occurring. So you're basically forcing her into a freak off by dragging her back into the room. So that's where I think the government is clearly going to make their argument of force.
Okay, very good. So I want to be clear, folks, based on the question that DJ Genesis just brought up. That was a complete rumor, so we don't want to carry into that. When Cassie came out of that room with her bag, she testified that that was her belongings and her phone, although the defense did try to argue that he was after to get the phone. We don't know. Maybe online they try to say he took the phone. It just gets so complicated. But for the most part, it was not presented that way. So let's get into sex trafficking with fraud. Let me explain what that means. Basically, it's all started in court on a Friday when the defense stood up and says, hey, the prosecutors are trying to introduce two exhibits, DX331, DX331A. Basically, these two exhibits were Jane saying to herself in her diary, Diddy is a pathological liar. Well, why did she come to that conclusion? Diddy was in Miami, and I think she was out in LA. So they went through a part where they broke up. He was flying her in, and she's saying, listen, I don't want to sleep with these strange men. They've been taking advantage of me. I'm more than that. And plus, you're taking these other women out on the best dates, whining and dining them. So Diddy tells her to fly to Miami. She's flying to Miami, but there's some issues with the Wi-Fi. She's going in and out. She saw the message, something insinuating a freak off, and she kind of got a pit feeling. Well, what the feds did, while Diddy is telling her, I'm going to wine and dine you, and that's it, he's simultaneously texting one of the sex workers saying, let's do a freak off. And so the prosecutors are saying that he's defrauding her about a material fact because he's saying, baby, I'm going to wine and dine you, knowing good and well he already has a sex worker on deck or en route. What do you think about this being fraud for this case, but also for men going forward in the future, lying to women?
I think that's a problem for everyone. When I say it's a problem for everyone, and the reason why I say that is because on the women's side, if I'm going somewhere with somebody, I have an expectation it's just going to be me and him. You know, I hate to refer back to Mason Cameron with Dwight Howard, but somebody popping out of the closet that you were not expecting to be there, and you're having an intimate moment, that's not consensual, because at that point, I didn't know the other person was coming. And so that could be a bit of an issue there. But the unfortunate part about that is the background of how their relationship worked. It seems like they'd done freak offs before. She probably had done several freak offs before. So they had a little bit of a history where they would do these freak offs. Now, the part for Combs that's a problem is they're meeting because she really doesn't want to participate with multiple other people. She just wants to spend some time with him. But at the same time that's happening, he's trying to get other people involved and trying to get her into doing these freak offs. Now, the issue that's going to happen is he forcing her to do it? If she doesn't want to do it and she's getting there telling him she doesn't want to do it, if they go back somewhere, does she have to do it because he said Did he try to get her to change her mind? Maybe there were text messages, and then we don't know the other part of the conversation. Maybe when they met, she agreed, you know what, I'll do this one more time for you, baby. We don't know. So that's going to, when I say that creates a problem for everybody, when you have adults in that kind of situation and we have these open relationships and these swinger kind of lifestyles, what's going to happen when it gets to court? What's going to happen when somebody gets recoded when there's a situation like this? I think that's something that's a real conversation that we need to talk about.
The third part is sex trafficking with coercion. Let me break it down for Cassie and Jane since they are subjects of this case. Cassie's coercion is that they started dating and she was basically under his management, his company. She had 10 albums over 10 years that she had to put out. Basically, she put out her first album the first year, started dating Diddy, and ended up doing freak offs the rest of the time. And they're saying coercion because she was so busy doing freak offs that Diddy would not allow her. One time she wanted to do a song with Common. Diddy said no. She never put out another album, although on defense, they did show that she did do movies and singles and she did some, pretty notable songs. So that's as far as Cassie goes. What are your thoughts for coercion?
I think that's a very weak coercion argument. I got a 10 album deal. I only put one album out, and he was coercing me, and they would not let me put out any other music. I think when you look at that from a label standpoint, I can point to somebody like Carl Thomas. Carl Thomas probably has like two Bad Boy albums, and they were about 5-6 years apart because of how he wanted to work or didn't want to work. And he was a perfectionist. And there's sometimes where individuals get into doing different things and they don't have time to record albums. Or there may be a situation where the public did not want to hear Cassie's music anymore. I'm going to be honest with you. Cassie was an okay artist, but she didn't have the best voice in the world. But she had a situation where she had a catchy song with a catchy hook, and then that was it. So I don't think that that's a very strong argument for coercion in terms of how much music she put out. 10 album deal, I only did one album. There are plenty of situations where that occurs because the label has to know that the people actually want that before they put money behind a project. And so to me, that's not evidence of that happening in my eyes.
Capricorn Clark testified. I was in court. I saw it come out of her mouth. Basically, she said that Cassie had talent, but she was not talented like a Mariah Carey or a Whitney Houston. She also said that Cassie was basically a studio audience, that she could do great in the studio, but she would often bomb during live performances. That's just a side note. Now, getting to Jane, as far as sex trafficking and coercion, this is what they came up with. They said that Diddy was paying, under this love contract, he was paying her rent for $10,000 a month, which he is currently still paying. And also of note is that he's paying for her legal fees even up until this point as well. So with the coercion, Jane felt like she had to continue doing these freak offs or she would lose her home. What are your thoughts?
That one for a man is very, very troubling. When I say for a man, because you have these sugar daddy, sugar baby relationships that happen out here. And when somebody has been good to you, you have made that decision to continue to participate in certain behaviors, certain activities, or not participate in certain behaviors and activities because of your allegiance to them. And see, that's where I'm going to have an argument for a lot of people, how much of an implication that this could put on other people. Wealthy men who decide that they're going to go out and have situations where they're going to have a friend on the side, they're going to pay their bills and the rent. What happens when that person says, you know what, I really didn't want to do it anymore. I felt coerced. I felt threatened. I think he was just using me for sex. And if I didn't do it, he wasn't going to continue to pay my rent. So I'm being trafficked and I'm being tricked and coerced into doing this because without his money, I can't live. See, you got to start thinking about that. Now, let's be honest. If he decides to stop paying her money, he decides to stop paying her money. Well, lifestyle go down, yeah. But she can go do something else. She can go get a real job she wants to. And so that's the argument that I'm going to make. And I think that's the argument I think a lot of men, if you're in a jury, they're going to be like, should we be taking that that attitude toward this, and how could it implicate other men? Now, I'm not, co-signing on any of this sugar daddy, sugar baby, all that kind of stuff going on in the world. But what I'm saying to you is there are real situations where men of money, power, and influence are going to be able to go on and be in situations where they're having these situations go on. The woman comes back 10, 12 years later and says, oh, I was being coerced. He was making me do it. He wouldn't give me my money if I didn't do it. That's a concern that I would have for men in that situation and people as a whole, because it could easily turn into situations like that for other people, not just Puffy.
Number 8 is forced labor. Let me tell you two different sides of that. During the closing arguments, they painted that, for instance, that video that we saw, that's forced labor because he's trying to force her to go back to have sex. And there's often with these freak offs, they can't even leave. She says both of them kind of insinuated that they went 4 days sometimes having sex with multiple men without any sleep, without any food, and the only thing they would get is more drugs. Also, Mia testified that when she first started working for the company, when it was time for her to go home on her first day, she was basically forced to go to the studio, or she was prompted to go to the studio. They're trying to paint it as force. She ended up staying in the studio till the next day around 1 o'clock. Then she works 5 days straight with no sleep. Several individuals, even David James, talked about sometimes he had to work so long, just whenever Diddy told him he could go home, he would go. How does that look for forced labor?
It depends on what kind of contract you have, right? Are you a salaried employee or hourly employee? If you're a salaried employee, they can work you as long as they want to. I'm gonna be honest with you, there's some law firms. The whole reason why I didn't go practice law at a law firm, because I see what some hours some of those guys were keeping. They would get up. I'll be honest, I worked on tobacco litigation, right? Where the cigarette companies were suing, the state was suing cigarette companies, and we worked for a firm that was representing the cigarette companies. And I would get to work on Monday through Thursday. I would work from 7 a.m. To 2 a.m. the next day. And I did that 4 or 5 days a week straight. And then on weekends, I do another 10, 12 hours a day. But that's what we were doing. Now, granted, I was a salaried employee, so I got overtime, but there were lawyers that were putting those hours in that were just contracts. They had a contract for, I'm as a lawyer going to pay you $170,000, $180,000 this year, and they could work them as long as they wanted to because it's in their contract. So what it comes down to it is that if they have a salary, a yearly contracted salary with no overtime, that's not forced labor.
Mia previously worked for another celebrity, and on her resume, she had that she was familiar with working 24/7 roles. But in court, she painted the picture like they were working her too long and for too many hours. What do you think?
That's the concern I would have. She knows that kind of particular position may require you, especially in the music business, it may require you to work 3 or 4 days straight. You may have 3 or 4 days where you only do 4 or 5 hours a day. But there are times when things are jumping and hopping where you may have to work 3 or 4 or 5 days straight. And then even on your resume, you're basically saying you can work any amount of time for as long as he needs you to on your resume. And so you negotiate that in your salary. If you don't want to work those hours, if you want overtime, you try to negotiate that when you're trying to get your pay. But that's not forced labor. You can easily quit and go get another job or attempt to go get another job. But because you have a contract with them for, we're going to pay you $100,000 this year, it might require you to work all of these hours you put on your resume. You're willing to work 24/7. That's not forced labor. That's what I'm going to argue as a defense attorney.
Okay, so the final predicate is witness tampering and obstruction. So basically, there are various cases where they tried to paint this picture, but most significantly was when the case dropped from Cassie and things started heating up. Uncle Paulie had reached out to one of the girls basically to try to reignite the conversation. And basically she said that you know, she said she knew where he was going, and he was basically trying to set her up. To eventually, Diddy did reach out to her, said he wanted to remember he was trying to remember a few things and wanted to talk to her. Is that really witness tampering?
It's not really witness tampering. It can be considered that, but for Diddy's point, I'm going to argue. I'm trying to figure out, because they're bringing up what happened 7 years ago in New York at 5 o'clock on September 5th. I may want to sit with you and say, hey, you know, where was I that day? Did you remember? What were we doing? I'm trying to remember all of this. He could easily be saying that. That's not really witness tampering. He's just trying to figure out, like, dang, you know, if I'm the defense attorney, these are arguments I'm making. Man, what was I doing on September 5th at 7 p.m. in New York? Or was I even in New York that day? Or how long did I stay? Or what was going on with me? Do you remember? He can easily be doing that.
As far as obstruction goes, there was an incident where Diddy allegedly beat the Chef Jordan. And so when David James, the assistant, came, Diddy told him to file a police report against Chef Jordan, saying that she was the one causing all of the problems. And he testified that he got in his car and drove around, but he never did go to the police to file that report. Is that obstruction of justice?
I don't think that's obstruction of justice. Now, let's be honest. If you got a situation where you're a chef, did you continue to work for him after that? And if you didn't, why didn't you make a police report? Do you have any evidence to show you were actually beaten or hit, that you actually even had a fight with him that day? There's reasonable doubt there, because there's no medical records, there's no pictures, there's no police report that you made. We just have to take your word for it. There's reasonable doubt there. You didn't do any of the things that a normal person would do. And if you went back to work for him, I have concerns about that. And so those are the arguments that I'm going to make.
In most cases, many of them continued to work for him. Some even came back to work for him. And in the case of Mia, she consistently, throughout the rest of time, his birthdays and so forth, saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. So that was a serious thing in this case. They were quite fond. Both Cassie and Jane stated that they still love Diddy.
And let me ask you something, Mel. It seems to me, and I'm not for sure of this, that despite all of that stuff, it seems like Puffy continuously did a lot of stuff for those folks that work for him. Now, I heard that when people were working for him, if you needed some extra money, if you needed something, that he really stepped up for you and got you what you needed. And what a lot of people will correlate that to is that, hey, I got employees that, hey, if they need something, I'm going to take care of them, right? Because they've been working for me for a while. If I'm in a jam, they ride for me. The people that work for me, like I said, I've been in business now 24 years. And one of my employees, she's been with me 7, but she's an extension of my other employee who had been with me 19. I have another employee who has been with me since day one, and another employee that's been here 17, 18 years of my 24 years. And there's some give and take. Sometimes I push them hard, but if one of them gets sick and they need a couple of grand here or there, I'm going to look out for them. So you're going to have a lot of give and take in those type relationships, or even when we get into arguments, we make up and we back to work. And so to make that into a situation that is to be considered part of a RICO, if I'm a defense attorney, which I am, I'm going to argue that that's not what that is. She's looking out for me, I'm looking out for her. That's what we do for each other. That's not a crime. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, so before we go to count number 2, the T Lounge says, I'm not taking none of these substance abusers' word for it, period.
And see, that's another conversation that we got to have. See, there are people that have addictions, people that have drug addictions, people that have sexual addictions, and there's people that are addicted to money too. So there's some people that They're willing to do anything they can to get money, and they're willing to give up their freedoms, rights, and situations to be able to get money. And when you have somebody that's hooked to a particular drug, they're going to do by any means necessary to get whatever particular drug that they need. And to me, you got to be very careful as the state, because Puffy is like a big fish, right? He's somebody that has a lot of money. And so when you have a guy that has a lot of money, a lot of people will do whatever he wants to be able to get that money, or to continue to get drugs, or be able to continue to get sex, or be able to continue to hang out and be famous, best because he's Puffy. So you, as a defense attorney, you have to point those things out. These folks are a bunch of drug addicts that were addicted to drugs, addicted to sex. They don't have a lot of money, and you got the federal government, each and every last one of them, being set down in a room, and they've never been in trouble before, being told that if you don't testify against Mr. Combs, you're going to be part of his RICO. He's not going to pay for your defense. Look what he did to Sean. He's not going to help you. He's going to do you like he did Sean. I'm going to be honest with you. That's what I know investigators, right? If I'm an investigator against Puffy, I'm bringing everybody in that I want as a witness. I'm going to bring them in there, and I'm going to say, you know what? You need to testify on our behalf, or we're going to charge you in this RICO. You don't have enough money to defend yourself. We're not after you. He's really the bad guy. We know you're a good person. We looked in for you. And so as a person that's in that situation, I'm going to go ahead and testify for the state because I don't have Puffy Combs' money. Matter of fact, Puffy gives me all the money that I make in my life right now. So what do I look like trying to have $1 million defense team, which I don't have $1 million, to fight the federal government, who has an endless amount of money? I could be risking my safety and my freedom. And if I'm an investigator, I'm gonna bring them folks in there and be like, look, you need to come on in with us. And if you don't, we're gonna charge you. And if you try to fight it for yourself, look at what he did to Sean. That's all I gotta say. And that's gonna be enough to make me say, you know what do you want to know? How do you want me to say it? When you want me to say it? And where you want me to say it? If I'm a defense attorney, that's how I argue that. We can't trust the government.
Okay, so I have the $1 million question for you. How do you get 8 predicate acts for a racketeering charge without having any police reports?
And see, that's the argument that I'm going to make too as well. Did anybody report this? Matter of fact, did Cassie even come down and report this? No, she didn't. When she filed her lawsuit, that's when everybody started paying attention. When the rumors out that there was something out there like this, that's when people started to pay attention. Nobody ever filed a police report on anything. The federal government has decided to come after Sean Puffy Combs because he's a billionaire. He made it in this country. He's a black man with $1 billion. And they have decided that they're going to go after the rich guy. And this is what's happening here.
Sorry.
And that's what a lot of people feel that way. And I will tell you this, listen, on some of this stuff, I have some concerns about. Now, as far as him touching Cassie, because listen, I got daughters, I got sisters, cousins. If you hit a woman, hey man, you got to pay for that. You hit a woman, drag a woman, you got to pay for that. But some of this other stuff, I'm not as sure that he's actually guilty of a lot of that kind of stuff, because a lot of people willingly participated in it. But the problem that he is going to have is they made him look like he is a kingpin. But because of the situation with Cassie, because of the Kid Cudi stuff, even though he may not get convicted of anything related to Kid Cudi, the fact that it looks like he showed up at this man's house and was in his house, the fact that may have happened puts it in the juror's mind that, hey, this is a bad guy. This is a powerful guy. This is a guy who acts like a mob boss. See, the state has done some things and then they pull back on it. But see, I'm going to take y'all into the mind, and this is why me and Mel have this conversation, of a defense attorney and a prosecutor. There are some times where I put things out there that I know may not be a part of my closing argument, but it's a little nugget to stick in the head of a juror. It's a little nugget to make them think. It's a little nugget I had a situation where one of my clients got accused of something sexual with a coworker, and the coworker was like, "Oh no, we didn't have no kind of relationship. He texted me a couple of times, maybe once a day, for this, and that." And then when I pulled out them 3,000 text messages over, over a 9-month period, and some of those text messages were late at night, then her tone changed. And so you got to sometimes drop a nugget, even as the state. You want to drop a nugget in the juror's mind that, hey, I'm thinking about not convicting Puffy Combs. Wait a minute. He went into somebody's house unannounced? Wait a minute. He set somebody's car on fire because he thought this man was with a woman he dated? Wait a minute. He possibly locked the door behind a lady over a necklace and would not let her leave? Wait a minute. The state, even though, if you notice, they dropped some of the charges related to that behavior, right? They stuck the nuggets in the heads of jurors. The jurors, even though they dropped certain parts of the case or certain allegations,
wow,
it's still in the head of the juror that this person did this. So should I trust this guy? As a prosecutor, they think like that. They drop nuggets sometimes that may not be part of what he gets convicted of, but it creates a situation upon which we don't trust Mr. Combs.
Mark Agnifilo, he brought out the point that you just hit on, saying that basically he told the jury you cannot trust the government. And this is the reason why. He said that Cassie, Mia, Jane, none of them came down to the Southern District of New York and says, hey, I want to file a case against Sean Diddy Combs for doing all of these things. Instead, Cassie went to a civil attorney. So he said this was a targeted act because the government saw Cassie's complaint and then came after Sean Combs, and the judge was irate. Actually, the prosecutors are the ones who brought it up and said that this was misbehavior of some sort for him to say, how dare you say you can't trust the government?
Listen, I wouldn't give a damn about the judge being mad at me or the state being mad at me. They're not my concern. And see, that's the thing that people miss. When I work for you, my job is to fight for you. You and I are one. I'm going to treat it like I'm going to jail. So in that term, yeah, I'm going to say you can't trust the government because you're going after my client. And to be honest with you, you just made one of the arguments that I would make. Nobody came down here and filed a police report. Cassie didn't. She filed a civil suit. So despite all this stuff allegedly happened to her, and she even on a video got her head kicked like a football. She didn't report it, but she wanted to file a civil suit when she wanted to get paid. And so I'm going to point that out. More importantly, when it comes to the other women didn't come down and report this. You know why they're here today? They're here today because the government walked in and told them. They gave them immunity, right? They gave those women immunity. So the women had a choice. The women had to either take that immunity or be part of the RICO with Sean Puffy Combs, and they don't have Sean Puffy Combs' money. As a matter of fact, Mr. Combs, despite them being used against, he's still paying the rent of one of the people who are going to testify against him. Which is a defense attorney. I'm going to say, if I know somebody's going to testify against me, I'm not going to continue to pay their bills. That's the argument that I'm going to make. And even those two individuals didn't come down and make any police reports. You know why they are testifying for the government today? Because the government gave them immunity, number one. You can either go and get indicted with him, or you can take our deal and you better tell us what we want to hear. And the only reason why these individuals are saying what they're saying today is because they're being threatened. If they do not get in here and say what the government wants them to say, they're going to get charged with Mr. Combs. And they're going to protect themselves. And you can't trust the government. And that's exactly what I'm going to say. And if the judge gets mad at me, so be it. He can probably strike it. So let's say the judge strikes. Oh, Mr. Johnson, I strike what you just said. So be it. Who cares? I want the jury to hear that because it's still in their head. They can't unhear it. I'm going to say it anyway. That's just me.
Can I tell you something that really bothers me about this case, as I said in court every day? Deontay Nash, who was a stylist, Mia, Capricorn, Clark, Cassie, these individuals were talking all the way up through this trial as they're testifying in court. And you have a man fighting for his life. So who's to say they're not comparing notes? Now, they were asked by the defense, hey, did you talk about this matter? They said no. But Deontay Nash said he was advising Cassie on what to wear to court. In fact, he's the one that said, oh, Cassie went into labor last night. That's how we knew she was about to have the baby. I think she had the baby on a Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
But they continue to talk to each other. Why is that allowed?
They say you're really not. This is the deal. When you have an existing relationship with somebody, you're allowed to talk to each other, but you're not supposed to talk about the case. And the sad part about that is, if we're talking and we're at court, we're going to talk about this damn case. We're just not going to let everybody else know that we're talking about the case. But we're probably going to talk about the case. And that's also a problem, because these people can get together, they can match their testimony up and say what needs to get said, and they'll be able to match that testimony up together. It shouldn't be allowed. That's something that shouldn't happen. What we typically do is we invoke the rule, which usually means that these individuals cannot be in the courtroom when one of the other ones is testifying, so that they don't run in there and say the same thing. But like I said, in situations like this, what are you going to do?
We had Bonner come into court, and I think this is very significant, almost like the Johnny Cochran, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. But she came to court. She said that on September 26, 2016, early in the morning, Diddy had her hanging off of the balcony, pulled her back, threw her on the furniture. She even provided pictures of bruising on her leg and on her back that had metadata for that date. Okay. Nicole Westmoreland out of Georgia, that represented Young Thug, she pointed out when we came back from break, she showed that Diddy was actually in New York that very date. He was in New York staying at the Trump Plaza. There's no way really he could have been there to do what they had even metadata for. What are your thoughts about that?
And see, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about. These individuals that are testifying for the state, they're going to add a little sauce to it, because remember, they have to testify truthfully, but more importantly, as an individual, you want to give the state one of those aha moments so that they leave you alone. You don't want them charging you. See, what people don't understand, you get immunity if you faithfully testify, honestly testify, right? Well, if the government thinks that you're lying and that you're not being open, they can still charge you. So the individual who is testifying has an incentive to give testimony that's going to please the government to get them off their butts. And once again, hanging people out of windows, where does that come from? Big Red from the 5 Heartbeats. It goes back to the same thing. You're making him look like he is some mob boss, some record exec that hangs people out the window, make them throw up, and then pull them back in. When you see somebody like that, it puts in the mind of somebody who's willing to kill you if you don't do what they want you to do. But once again, that stuff come out of movie. Anytime I heard somebody get hang out of a window, have we ever seen anybody really do that in real life? No, I haven't. Now, if you have, I wish you the best, because you've been around some really bad people. But I have never seen anybody get hung out of a window, because if you drop them, it's a problem. You're going to get charged with murder. So you have to think about that. I've never heard anybody getting done that way. That stuff out of a movie. And to me, when I hear that kind of stuff, then I think people are kind of, telling the fib, if you ask me as a regular juror, if I'm on a jury.
So Bonner dig this. This is what she said. She said that her and Cassie basically put the story together. Obviously, the defense brought it out, but they compared notes and they said, well, this hotel had a balcony. Let's say it happened at the hotel. And then Cassie says, oh, my apartment on the 17th floor had a balcony. You could use that. So basically, they conspired and put together a story. And also, that's why the date turned out to be wrong. How does that affect the case when a witness comes in and say that your star witness is making up stories? Doesn't that throw out the whole testimony of that individual?
It does. It brings into question, like if I got somebody lying about he hung me out of a window at a hotel in New Jersey or California, and I'm in New York, or if I'm in California, you're saying on September 5th, I hung her out of a hotel in New York, and we know for a fact that maybe I'm at a charity event. I got metadata saying that I'm in California or I'm in Newark, New Jersey, but you're in New York getting hanged out of some window. Then to me, I'm going to look at the majority of your testimony when it comes to anything illegal, especially I'm going to be looking at you with a side eye that I can't believe you because you've lied to me. And if you've lied to me about being hung out of a window, you're willing to lie to me about anything else.
We haven't heard about anybody being really charged with perjury in this case, but it's quite evident. Why is that the case?
They really have to prove that it's perjury. You got to know you're doing it. A lot of these acts happened, years ago. So in some sense, you're testifying to the best of your knowledge. It's kind of how I referred to this earlier. Do we really remember what we were doing on November 5th of 2015 at 2 p.m.? No, we really don't. Sometimes we can figure out where we were. Sometimes we don't know exactly what we were doing and how we were doing it. And so sometimes you have situations where people will either forget where things happened at, or they'll have some of the dates off, the times off, the places off, because you can't remember everything that you do every single day, especially as you get older.
Okay, so before we get into count 2, 3, 4, and 5 briefly, can you just tell everyone who you are and where to find you? We have a lot of people in the room.
My name's Attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I'm a practicing criminal defense attorney. I've been doing this almost 25 years. I am licensed to do local, state, and federal criminal defense. I've worked cases before in the federal courts. I probably, over the span of 20 some odd years, probably represented between 5,000 and 6,000 individuals over my legal career. I've done at least 20 to 30 cases in the federal system, all from drug cases and theft to racketeering. I've done a lot of different cases at the federal level. And so I'm an experienced attorney. I still do this every day. I love doing it. I live by it. And I try to advocate for my clients as strongly as I can. I try to use the information that is given to me to benefit them. I try to make sure that the rights of the individuals are protected regardless of what they're being accused of. I can be reached at Attorney Calvin D. Johnson at gmail.com. I can be reached at theywon'tletmeout.com, or I can be reached at 214-565-5600. And those are the ways that you can get in touch with me.
Okay, my name is Mel, and I'm with Watching the World. I'm the court correspondent for Tasha K, so most people would recognize her. I also do the court correspondency for Fresh and Fit. I will be on there today at 5:30 if you want to check it out. I basically come in and tell everybody what's happening with the court. So please like, share, and subscribe if you like the material. Definitely show support to DJ Genesis Detroit. You can find her on YouTube, and also Calvin has laid out his work. So we're going to get into the final 4 counts, and then we're going to be out. We're going to let a few of you come up if you want to before we end. So number 2 is sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. What do you think?
The problem that Puffy has is the video of her being dragged and down the hallway back to the room. that's a huge problem for him. But with that being said, she has, based on some of the testimony, been the person to set the freak offs up. There are several text messages where she's alluding to situations where she can't wait to do the next one. She specifically wants particular guys to be able to come back to do things with her. And so that's an issue. But the problem with that one is the dragging back down the hallway against her will back into that room. I think that's a huge problem for Puffy. I think that's his biggest problem, even though the fact that she appeared to be the setup person for the freak offs and actually encouraged them at times. So that's the concern I have with that. But it seems like, with that being said, that Cassie traveled to these locations with the expectation of it being involved in some kind of sexual behavior or sexual activity. So as a defense attorney, I would argue against that, even with the dragging back down the hall.
Okay. How about count number 3, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking with Cassie Ventura?
Now, that's another problem for Puffy, possibly because you have all of these setups where you're calling these people, you're bringing them from across the country over to New York, out to play in LA. You're bringing people to places across state lines with the purposes of having sexual activity. However, once again, it comes down to the people that are involved. When you got Cassie is actually wanting to do this. She's actually setting these things up. She actually wants to participate in these things. So even though that you have that, there still is some concern about being involved in the behavior anyway, because you really cannot do that. When you bring somebody across state lines for the purposes of sexual activity, that's a problem.
How about count 4, sex trafficking of Jane Doe?
Once again, that's another issue within itself, because even though she's basically saying, well, maybe I didn't want to participate sometimes in them, it seems like she kind of knew that that's what was going to be expected of her. That's what she was kind of doing. Is that the one that was getting paid the money, if I'm correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so she is a grown person and deciding to remain in this open relationship with Puffy to get this money every month, continuing to do what she was doing with individuals. And that's the thing, you know, she could have decided, hey, I'm going to not speak to you anymore, not date you anymore. It even seems like there was some point where they kind of lost some contact. We're not dealing with each other anymore. And she could have left it like that, never had to go back in that situation. But in this situation, she can be listed, if I'm a defense attorney, as an individual that wanted to partake in this behavior. And so that's the thing. I'm going to say, no, she's not being sex trafficked. She's deciding to participate in sexual behavior with consenting adults.
Count 5, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking with Jane Doe.
That's kind of some similar arguments. You got grown folks deciding that they're going to get together and participate in certain kinds of behaviors. Now, you had a little coercion with that one, if I'm correct. But once again, as a man, as an individual with money, not just a man, but it can be women nowadays too, with the way that the world is. When you have money, you have influence. And these people can decide to partake in it or not partake in it. So I'm going to argue that, hey, they decided, with knowing me, knowing how I get down, they decided that they wanted to come participate in this behavior with me. And I'm going to argue that that's not sex trafficking. It's consenting behavior between adults. And I think that's a similar argument that his defense attorneys were making.
When it comes to sex trafficking, most people tend to believe that it involves young girls in hotel rooms. A lot of times they end up going missing. This is a real problem in our local community. Does it hurt the narrative of sex trafficking that in this particular case, they didn't bring in one strange person that wasn't in a relationship with Diddy, like some random chick from Walmart or someplace down the street?
And see, that's the thing. You have these individuals who are in relationships with Diddy, who at times seem to know that this is the kind of behavior, sex, and open relationship that Mr. Combs wants to engage in. And you decide, I'm going to continue to call him continue to see him, continue to visit him, and then sometimes I'm going to continue to take part in the behavior, even though I wish it was just me and him. I'm gonna still do it. And so you got situations where when sex trafficking, typically the sex trafficking cases I got, it involves somebody may meet somebody once or twice, talking to them for a week, and the next thing you know, they're taking people all over the country, getting them to do stuff. A lot of times it's underage individuals. A lot of times it's situations where they don't even get phones. They can't even contact their families. They're never out of the person's sight. And if they are out of the person's sight, they can only do it for the purposes of making the particular person the money that they are supposed to bring back to them. So the difference is in sex trafficking, the way that most of us see it and the way that it is happening here is very, very different. Now, some people may disagree with me, but with that being said, typically when I see sex trafficking, I'm usually getting somebody who maybe just met the guy, maybe got coerced a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're doing this repeatedly, back to back. Or you got underage individuals, you're moving from state to state in this kind of situation. But these women that they did bring seem to have longer extended relationships with Puppy that would go on for months or years, and that they allowed themselves to become involved in multiple situations where at some point, or at least on one or more occasions, they were okay with doing a freak off. And so that would concern me. Now, does that mean a woman can decide, hey, if I'm getting one freak off, I got to be in all freak offs? No, that doesn't mean that. That's not what I'm saying. But what that does mean, as a jury, I got to start thinking about that. I got to start thinking about it. Have they had a relationship? Have they done this before?
We're getting feedback from your microphone, DJ Genesis.
Okay. Can you hear me?
No, it's from her microphone. We couldn't hear you because of her
microphone. Is it still feeding back?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I have this final question for you, and then we're going to allow people to come up. When it comes to this particular case, do you think because Diddy had this big issue and lawsuit with the big liquor company, and he sued them and settled, and also he was trying to start this whole political campaign movement of one party and all of this, do you think that someone could have approached Cassie and ignited this lawsuit that she did? Or do you think that this is something that she would have started on her own? This is just private speculation.
This is what I'll say. I think both can be true. I think her knowing that she probably knows stuff is going to come out about Puffy. So she's probably, I better get my money first. If I don't get my money first and quick, I'm not going to get it at all. And she's used to living a particular lifestyle. I mean, the guy she ended up dating was a trainer that Diddy had hired to train her, if I'm correct. He ain't got a lot of money. So with that being said, she probably wanted to get her money first. But I do tell you, and I've had this conversation with my wife, and I've had this conversation with other people. I say, look, the minute Puffy went out and he did two things. He had the situation with the liquor company. And he was talking about suing them. And when you sue big liquor companies, we're talking billions of dollars and a lot of power, because there are very few African American that hold the key to liquor. Liquor is one of those things where it's almost a luxury item and that people buy, that everybody takes in, and it can be marked up exponentially to where you can take a $75 bottle of vodka and turn it into a $5,000 order in certain places, depending on where you go. In addition to that, I remember when he played the Joker, one of the big film houses told him, don't do that anymore. We don't want you playing our character. And I think after that, he came back and made some kind of post where he dressed up as somebody else and then told them what they could and could not do. And I think the combination of the two things, number one, when you're going against big liquor, that's a problem. And then when you're going against the system in Hollywood, and them folks are telling you what you can and can't do, and you try to bug them, as well as you're trying to buy a network, I think he was involved in maybe the purchase of trying to maybe buy BET or buy another network. That concerns a lot of people, or the people in power, because now I got Puffy Combs with his attitude, controlling 5 or 10% stake in what gets out to the general public. For a lot of individuals like that, they don't want to see that, and so that's the concern that I have when you attack somebody like him who's a billionaire.
Okay, so there's a lot of people in the audience that I'm in court with every day. That girl Henny says exactly they paid him $200 million and took not only their Ciroc back and took his tequila brand from him. That story goes deep. Yeah, there's a lot with that, and it's frightening when you think about it. It might have a lot to do with why he's sitting where he's sitting at now.
Yeah.
All right, so at this time, I'm gonna go ahead, DJ Genesis.
Is my mic okay? I have a question.
Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Okay, so now so say if P. Diddy is if he actually gets indicted, or not, if he actually gets a guilty, right? So you have Fat Joe, you have Tyler Perry, and various other rappers that are kind of coming after him with RICO charges, right? Well, no, Tyler Perry just has a case, right?
Mm-hmm.
For $250 million.
Mm-hmm.
Is this case going to like open up a can of worms when it comes down to if someone sues somebody, that the federal government could come in and turn that into a RICO, and then be able to like use this case as a because it seems like they're using the R. Kelly case against Diddy in this case. Now they're going to be able to use R. Kelly and Diddy against other people. Is that kind of what can happen? Like, I don't know. It just seems like it's crazy.
That's the fear that I think that I have, number one, because I see a lot of African American men that have become extremely wealthy. You have Tyler Perry now being accused of something. You got Russell Simmons, who moved to Bali because he was like, I ain't gonna stay around for this one. You got Puffy and you got R. Kelly here. You got that situation going on. And so when it comes to the entertainment industry, and when it comes to African Americans or people of color controlling their own destiny in these media vehicles, then I get concerned. I mean, I am concerned. I mean, Jay-Z got fake sued. You got Puffy with this situation. Now you got Tyler Perry coming down the pipe. It's a lot for us to worry about when it comes to the fact that we are finally getting control of media, music, and movies and networks. And when we start to get in those spaces, somebody gets sued, right? Look at what they've done to the music industry right now, right? And the streaming and how much they get paid for streaming. I was listening to, was it DJ Mustard today or Metro? I was listening to Mustard was doing an interview, and he said that on 1 billion streams, he can't pay 2 months rent to where he lives at. I want you to think about that. And so that money is going somewhere, but it's not going to the artists who make it. And when you have people of color controlling their media platforms, Puffy owns a lot of his masters. Perry has his own studios. That's a conversation we got to think. We got to think about.
Yeah, and another thing is, okay, so you got that legal precedence, but it's like the one thing that is scary too is that flying a person from one place to another. People are getting flown out. IG models get flown out all the time. So if you happen to have sex with that person, now it's a whole new ball game where people can say, oh, that's sex trafficking now.
Oh, let's say you fly them out 3 or 4 times and you decide you don't want to see them no more, or you stop calling them out and they decide, well, I'm gonna sue you. You were trafficking me. People get scared of that kind of stuff, and that as African Americans, we got to be very, very careful, because that when they say in fun, when the rabbit has the gun, that gun of this case can be turned around at several high-profile individuals. that happen to be people of color. And I'm not saying this is happening to Puffy because he's black. A lot of it is on his own situation and doing. But I would be a fool to not realize that could be part of it. And we have to think about that. That's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like that there is definitely a target. That's, I mean, I think it's, some people say it's called a transfer of wealth.
Yeah,
that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know, and it seems like they are definitely focused on a certain age group, time frame of success.
Yeah,
you know,
these
and
individuals are 50 years old and older, right? And they're hitting them with stuff, and they control their own stuff.
Yes,
put R. Kelly and Puffy's catalogs together as a whole, probably count for about 20% of black music as a whole. When you think about it, I want you to think about it. Them two people alone, right?
And you know what? Could you imagine when Michael Jackson, right, when he was being accused, that whole thing could have been a RICO charge?
Well,
they could have turned that into a RICO charge, a federal RICO charge.
Listen,
and he could have been facing life in prison.
Michael Jackson, because he bought the rights to the Beatles, and I don't want to get off the topic.
Not to get off the subject, I'm just saying is that.
But I'm going to give y'all an example. With Michael Jackson owning his own masters and the masters to the Beatles, he owned 75% of Sony's catalog. Of the money that was generated from Sony, Michael Jackson was making 75% of the music catalog's money by having the rights to those two things alone. When you start taking money from people and you start making too much money, the system has a way of changing the metrics to where you don't make that money. The Master P's will never happen again. The J Princes will never happen again. The Cash Money records will never happen again because they won't let it. They just won't. It's business. And with Tyler Perry, he's almost might be a test case for what happens when you do it at the movie level. Who knows?
Well, if this is passed, I mean, all anything it has to do is if you have enough people that it sounds like to me with this case is that if you got 3 or 4 more people that say that something happened, they can come together and they can just do a RICO against you if anything was involved with you going across state lines to see that person engage in any kind of.
But that's the argument, and that's something that as a people sometimes we get so caught up in the domestic violence and the trashing of African American men, and I'm gonna keep it 100, that we sometimes start looking around and not really realizing, hey, he's wrong for that. He definitely needs to be punished for that. But sometimes we don't look at things globally and realize some of the other things that could potentially happen when you start going out to individuals with cases like this. Is it a criminal case? Yes. Is it a RICO? Should it be RICO? That's the thing that we should be opening our third eye for.
Life in prison. That's what he's facing. That is crazy. I think that's R. Kelly isn't even. Was he facing life?
R. Kelly's a whole nother conversation.
I don't think he was facing life. I don't think he was. But you know what's interesting is like let me just say this. All the other things. Remember they said they had a Homeland Security at his house. Mm-hmm. Remember they said they was going through all his stuff and they found this. All that they found tunnels and all that. Like we did not hear none of that in this case. Nothing has been said about. I mean, they were talking about children and stuff like that being transported in the middle of the night. I mean, all these crazy allegations, all before the case starts. Then it come to find out this is just about 4 main people that are testifying against him about, and they all seem to be this freak off party thing. All these things people were saying. And none of that has come out at all.
And in some point, each 4 of them were in some kind of open relationship with him, and that had an extended period of some kind of relationship with him. And at least in 1 or more instances, openly and freely participated in freak-offs with him.
Can you imagine how many artists that are in relationship with different women because they're traveling? What they say, I got hoes in different area codes. Then remember, Ludacris had a song.
Yeah,
I got hoes.
That's
Okay.
That's what it comes down to. Do you want to make that into a RICO, or should that be a RICO? Or should Puffy Combs be charged in state court for what he did to Cassie? Should he be charged with some other things, because with some of the other behavior? Should this even be a federal RICO? And I think that's something that the jury might have to address, right? And they're going to decide, and that's something that we got to think about. But Mel, what else did you have? What else were you thinking about? Because I want to make sure that we open it up to the floor.
No, I'm ready. I was ready then to open it up to the floor, so I'm done.
Let's open it up, y'all, because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. We want to keep the audience engaged. So if y'all have questions, shoot them in, Mel, or shoot them up, and I'll try to answer them based on what you identify.
Mel, did you put the StreamYard link on your side? Because I can't paste it onto your side. If there's anybody that wants to come up, please feel free to come up. We especially I would love to see that girl Henny come up, because she's been really speaking of a good bit in the thing. I think she has some insight. I would love to hear from her. I mean, there's some people that have been really, really giving us some great insights in the audience. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to click all of your, the chat was going really fast. So if I missed your messages, please forgive me. I tried to highlight as much as I could. So if you guys want to, I'm gonna drop the link into my chat. In the meantime, we can kind of ask some of the questions.
Well, it looks like Shanika said R. Kelly has 30 years. He's in jail under the Mann Act law. Yeah, that's right. The Mann Act law was actually used.
I'm gonna post it in the comments.
Yeah, to imprison. Yeah, the comment was used to imprison the boxer Jack Johnson back in the day, because he used to carry white women across state lines, and he was a world championship boxer from Galveston, Texas, who was one of the first men to openly fight white men in the heavyweight division of boxing. But he was very unapologetic, very brash, and they came up with the Mann Act because he would openly travel across state lines with white women. And even though that they were doing it on their own, under their own power, because he was, as they say, transporting them across state lines for sexual and immoral purposes, they convicted him of the Mann Act, but later on pardoned him after he passed away. But some of the other things, and I was going to take a look as well at the chat. Let me look at some of it. We can go to some of the comments. Let me see what we got here. There's a lot of information in here. And one of the things that we got to be careful about is that that girl Henny said they're changing the laws by trying the laws right in front of our faces. And when we say they're changing the law, what?
Uh-oh. What happened?
Okay, so it looks like we lost Calvin. I was going to ask the question for you, Eric Nickerson, but we lost him for a second.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, that girl, Henny?
Hey, everybody. How are you? Thank you, Mel, for having me up.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Nice
anytime.
to meet you, DJ Genesis.
Nice to meet you too. So, Calvin will be back. Sorry, I think we lost him just for 1 second. Here he goes.
I'm coming back. In this situation, we can charge you with this because in the past, a RICO has been proven under those circumstances. So that's why they said they're changing the laws right in front of us. And that's why we got to be really careful when we allow something like this to happen. Why did the Southern District of New York, go back to that question before, why did the Southern District of New York what?
Why did the Southern District of New York get the case and not Los Angeles Federal Court?
They probably, because what happens typically is Puffy spends more than the majority or a lot of his time in New York. I think that's where he's incorporated at. And he does a lot of work there. And that particular office, because that particular office probably took the case because they had a lot of the evidence. It's probably where the case started. And so they just probably held on to it. And Puffy being from New York, they probably tasked that office with being the one that handles the case. And so that's probably why they did it in New York. In addition to that, I think that they have a better chance of proving it in New York as opposed to Los Angeles, probably. Just the jury pool issue too as well.
Okay, very good. So we have
Go ahead. Sorry.
so we have that girl Henny in the house. Shout out to you. I've been
Hey,
in court with
man.
her every. Hey, what's happening? We've had lunch together. We've done a lot together, right?
Mm-hmm.
This court case has been. What do you think sitting in the courtroom? What are your thoughts about it so far?
This case has really been one that, if you just look at it from a surface level, you're going to miss what the government was trying to build here. And for me, this has been real observation, and it challenged me as an everyday citizen to do my own research and do my due diligence to kind of understand where are they going with this, because a lot of the things that they charged, we look at it, we hear RICO, we think La Cosa Nostra. We hear distribution, we think large quantities, we think Pablo Escobar. These are the things that we're accustomed to. So I actually had to go and look at distribution and then find out, does it have to be for profit? How is the distribution? How is this trafficking? Things that I never thought to look in before. And I'm so glad that, Calvin, you came up here and said this, because I've been trying to ring the bell with a lot of our people and saying, look, there are things that he has done. While you're saying free him where? Back into society or to rehabilitation or intensive therapy? Like, what is freeing him look like for people who are saying it? And I don't have anything against anyone. I don't really have a stance except for educate yourself, because the way that they're charging this, everyday things that we do, you can accidentally end up in a RICO and not even realize it if it's just you and your friends and y'all are doing something. And I loved, Mel, that you brought up the passport boys, because that was something that first came to mind with the trafficking. Because I'm like, all this flued out business, and then we're watching videos of guys filming the females and they're saying, oh, she gotta go because she don't want to put out. This case is a lot deeper than just what's on the surface. And what I asked in the question, in the comment section, you already asked, like, if they get away with the way they built this case, what does that mean for the everyday Joe and Jane?
And I'll give you one more. I'll give you one deeper. You know, like I said, I've worked with professional athletes. Now, I worked with guys that didn't take in a lot of craziness. But because I did work for him, I did see some other guys that kind of, did some things, flew people out. I remember going to an all-star game in a particular city where one player, he actually had brought 3 or 4 girls out, different girls. And when I say that, and put them up in different places. So what happens when you're doing that? And are you trafficking? Or are you just, I got a girlfriend over here, I got a girlfriend over there, I got a girlfriend over here, and I got a girlfriend here. Could they consider that to be trafficking? Right. You got to start thinking about what the person is charged with. Some people go, well, he's wrong. He kicked Cassie. He beat her up. He dragged her. He should get charged with whatever he should get charged with. No, he should get charged with assaulting Cassie and deal with that in the courts. If that's what he did. Some of this other stuff I have concerns about. Yeah. Not just because of that, but the future implications that could put on ourselves and others.
Well, I know I also looked up, domestic violence and coercion. I was looking into that, and I've noticed that some states are starting to look at DV as coercion. So I'm like, they're changing, because before it was assault, right? Now it's changing, and in this case, it's being considered force. And I get where they were trying to go with it, but I'm like, this affects us. Like, can we go a little deeper? So, what are your thoughts on them making these changes to what these laws are and how they're applying them?
And see, that's the thing, the application of the law. Who's making the decision to bring these kinds of cases against folks? And see, one thing that I've learned, especially after running for office here in Dallas, that there are people in places that don't want to see certain people at certain levels and positions, right? So if I'm Puffy and I become powerful enough to sue $1 billion liquor company, it's not advantageous to leave me there. I'm like a dragon whose fire is becoming more intense, and I'm able to shoot more fireballs.
Exactly.
So what they want to do is sometimes you want to pour water down the throat of that dragon and make sure he never breathes fire again. And so when you become too powerful and you have too much money, then it becomes an issue. And I think that it's not wrong for people to start thinking about that. Because, you know, some people will tell us, oh, mom, man, y'all crazy. Y'all making it racial. There you go again. No, man, that stuff's real. When you become an African-American person, man or woman, you got enough money to do what the hell you want to do, and they can't tell you what to do because you got enough money to last you the rest of your life. You don't think you can become a problem in certain situations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
That's
see,
the damn truth.
the liquor industry, you mentioned Hollywood, two places that he definitely pissed off and actually behaved like he was bigger than the program. And what people don't understand is that's old money that ties into many different avenues that can go and have influence in many different places. And when you're considered quote unquote new money and the door was open for you to become new money, old money will definitely come in and do exactly what you just said. And I don't mean to get conspiracy theorist on here, but this to me is not even a conspiracy theory. To me, this is everyday real life. And I really feel like people stop debating what the charges are. Have these conversations to understand how they're applying this to him.
And I'll give you an example. I kind of tell people the story. I hope Kareem does not get upset with me when I tell the story. I have a friend of mine who was a hypnotic liquor company rep, right? Y'all know the hypnotic liquor, the blue stuff people drinking.
Yeah, I remember hypnotic.
Which I'll never touch again. That's a whole nother conversation. But I had a friend of mine that was a liquor rep for him for here in Texas. He's from New York. And he ended up repping that liquor, making it popular down here in the South. He went to clubs in Dallas, Houston, Austin, all over the place, making sure people were drinking it, making sure people liked it, busted out, made it popular here in Texas. He was also a DJ. So he gets into a contest in the local DJ station here. And there's a job. And if you promote yourself right, you can get a job at a record station. Of course, he's a promoter. So he promotes himself properly. So he gets the job with K104 as DJ Hypnotic, right? What does the Hypnotic record company do? They send the radio station a what?
Cease and desist.
They send him a cease and desist. And all of the work for the last 7 or 8 years of him building that company, it's a liquor company. They told him, nah, I don't care. And you built your name up and you got an opportunity and you work for this company, but they're showing you that you're just their worker. And they put a cease and desist. Now, thank God that this didn't stop him. He got a job, DJ Chaotic. He is currently 50 Cent's tour DJ, and he's one of my former clients. And I'm happy for him. But I'm sharing this story of with liquor companies, you don't mess with them. When they want to put you down, they want to put you in your place, they will put you in your place because liquor is big business. So this is just one of the stories that I can talk about when it comes to those people in power. When they start seeing you got as they say, big motion, you got big motion. You got to be careful.
So I would to welcome to the panel Utongo. Did I say that correctly? Utongo? You there, sir? Okay, well.
He left off.
He's here, but he's not saying anything. There you go. Hello?
How you doing?
Yes. Did you have a statement that you would like to make?
I'm just listening right now. I'm going to come in when they're ready for me to come in. I'm just listening.
Okay. All right.
Oh, well, Mel, I'm going to say thank you for having me up. Again, Calvin, it was wonderful hearing this. Mel, great show. Appreciate this so much. You guys keep doing the good work that y'all are doing. I'm gonna drop down now.
Henny, before you go, hold on, Henny, before you go, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, so let's get it clear while you're still here. I think it makes a good forum, right?
Okay.
We're not because I think you're very solid from what I see and been dealing with you every day.
Mhm.
We're trying to make it clear, and I want to do it with her here. We're not here just to bogusly say Diddy shouldn't be this and he shouldn't be that. We're saying basically they're setting the stage to overcharge him for something that he's done. We're not taking away from the fact that he's done a lot of bad things, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
guys
Right.
you guys all agree with that, right?
yeah.
Right.
And I agree with that. Like I said before,
Yeah.
for what he did to Cassie, he should suffer from that because as a man, and just as a man and as a black man, I respect my sisters. I have a daughter, I have sisters, I have a mother, I have nieces that you can't touch them or I'm gonna touch you. And you
Right.
should go to jail for doing whatever you did to them. But at the same time, I don't want somebody to get overcharged and I don't want somebody robbed of their life, liberty, and everything that they've gotten wrongfully. So I'm very, very careful about that. Somebody
Okay.
abuses somebody should go to jail. Let's be real.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much.
Did the government want justice for the potential victims at all? Because they could have had a state case and they probably had an open and shut case in the state. So why go for this big overreach to do all of this? Like you're just trying to put lights out on this. That's what I understand. You know?
Oh, okay, that's Uda on the go. I didn't man,
Uda.
I didn't realize that's Uda. Yo.
It's the truth.
What up, Uda? What's happening? And also we
Good
have the
job.
tea lounge we have everybody from the courtroom in the building, the tea lounge.
Oh,
This is
man.
awesome. We got the queen in here. So we'll do a roundhouse. Go ahead, Uda, finish off and then we'll go to the tea lounge.
I was just saying, though, it just seems like a massive overreach. First of all, we all watch good movies. This is the first thing. And people that's watching this movie, you can't tell me that this is a really good movie right now. It's not looking like a really good film. Maybe how you enter your characters, the villains, everything into this play, they didn't really have much. They had a little main character, which was Cassie, and they had some other little background, actors or actresses that was in it. Then we have a Jane, you could probably say is closest to a starlet that's in the movie with it, but she's not that as well. She was never Cassie, so we're not going to compare her to be like a Cassie. I just think that the prosecution did an overreach on this whole thing. I just really, really do. I don't know if they really wanted the victim or the potential victim. If you feel there's a victim in this, I don't think they cared about them ever getting justice if they wanted it. I just think it's about Puffy. It's about maybe this is their O.J. Simpson case. It's a big case. It's a lot. It's a lot of other things that's riding on this case besides what we're just hearing in that courtroom. Because I don't think that they really showed us that much.
Okay. Calvin, you want to touch on that?
And you see, that's the thing, a lot of us feel like it's an overreach because once again, like we said, Puffy has done some things that he needs to answer to justice for. But do you turn this into a federal RICO case upon which somebody can get 20, 30 years, 15, 20, 30 years for this particular situation, and you strip him of all his money and power because of this situation? We got to be very careful when that happens, because in the past, and I think some of us have to realize that the judicial system has been used to put us in our place when a lot of us have climbed out of the hole. Sometimes the judicial system has pushed us back in the hole. And so with that being said, when somebody gets charged or overcharged, if there's an overreach, it just doesn't affect them. It can affect a lot of people, because in the future, it'll be like, boy, you don't stay in your place, we could charge you too. Ma'am, you don't stay in your place, we can charge you too. We can overreach this on a federal case. And I'm telling you right now, when the feds come after you in a situation like this, at the minimum, you're going to spend $1 million, $2 or $3 or $4 million trying to fend for yourself if you're lucky.
Wow. That's amazing.
Think about what happened to Irv Gotti and them, right? Remember them? Remember
Yeah.
Murder Inc.? Yeah, they're like, yeah, we beat the state. And they were like, and 50 Cent literally told them, no, you really didn't beat them. What you did was they charged you. You had to spend $2 million so you couldn't help Supreme in them.
Right.
So they
Wow.
did so they basically created a situation where you had to fend for yourself. You couldn't help him fend for himself. So they got who they wanted.
Wow.
You have
Amazing.
to think about that.
Yeah. All right, the Tea Lounge. Let's go.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday.
How you
Hey.
doing?
So, my thought on well, I have a thought and then I have a question. My thought is this, right? The way that they've lowered, or the way that they're trying to recreate these precedents in regards to RICO and distribution of substances. What's going to happen is when it does turn around and come down the pipeline, people are not going to be getting immunity the way that these alleged co-conspirators are receiving immunity. The bar that they've set now for what is considered an enterprise, I think is because for so long, there's been this disorganized criminal activity in our community. Now they're trying to just say, you know what, listen, we don't have time to be trying to get you, waiting for you all to get organized. Let's take care of that for you. You can be disorganized and still have to answer to these charges. The other thing is, someone asked in the chat, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this. What are your thoughts on the witnesses being asked or meeting with the government so many times, some upwards of 20 times, 10 to 20 to 30 times with the government? What would you think that was about?
See, that I have concerns about that, because it don't take no 20 or 30 meetings for me to tell you what occurred when I was with a particular individual. If I'm a witness, you bring me in maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times, but when you're meeting with me 12, 15, 17, 20 times, what that sounds like, you're fishing for something that you didn't get in the first 5 or 6 or 7 meetings, and or you're coaxing me and coaching me into saying what you want me to say. And that's what that reeks of. And then when you have to think about it, if I'm an individual and I'm getting brought down here once or twice, I might be able to stand tall that long. But man, when them folks continue to come talk to me and I don't give them what they need, it gets to a point where I get a little spooked, man. I need to give them something to get them off of me, because I can't keep missing work. I don't want everybody thinking that the police are coming to pick me up all the time. Y'all know how we feel in our community about that. See somebody riding down the street and the police call on a repeated basis, and see how many people stand next to them next week. They're going to be like, man, I don't know about them. I mean, I want you to think about that for a minute. And then you got to think about this. How are you going to live your life? You're worried about catching a Fed case when you know almost all of the Fed cases carry time. You know, can you get probation? Yeah, I've seen it. I've had it actually happen for one of my clients before. But at the same time, most of those charges carry jail time. And sometimes your attorney can't negotiate you out of getting that jail time. So when you got the pressure of that stepping on your neck, man, we have to think about that as a community.
Right. And that's why we're meeting today. We're going through this and trying to open people's minds to how serious is it. It's going to affect the next generations. Okay, Queen, let's hear what you have to say. Welcome back.
Everybody.
Hey, Queen, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks. Hey, everybody in the chat. Hey, everybody on the stage. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for inviting me over, Mel. And also DJ, definitely appreciate it. And you know what? I was sitting here thinking, and I said, I could come on here. I could be the one that say, but P. Diddy did this and P. Diddy did that. And then I could come over here and I could say, but you know what? They're giving him way too much time and it is overrated and it's so forth and so on. But you know what I said? I think one of the best advices that I could give, and I hope P. Diddy ever hear anybody's voice, is that if you do get away, when you get away with not probably being charged with a lot of the stuff that you honestly should have or could have been charged with, I hope he take this as a walk away and understand that sometimes money is not power, because there's a lot of people that have money and all you can do is sit and watch it right now, because there's only so much canteen you can eat. It's only so much protection you could get. So I hope his takeaway here not would be that you still got skeletons in your closet that you didn't get rid of yet, but that those skeletons remain there and you take this away as a learning lesson to put your money where it belongs and help people. Because if you're behind bars, you'll be forced to help people then. But now that you may get another opportunity because you're at a split here, because they're overcharging you, it's what make people want to protect you. But the things that you know you've done, you know you need to be held accountable. But the only thing that can be held accountable is if you take it to your heart. Because once you take it to your heart, you can't do nothing but be held accountable, because you're the only one got to wake up. You're the only one got to go to sleep. You're the only one got to go and do it. So I hope he take this away as, let me learn and let me start what I'm doing and let me get it together. I got a lot of people watching me now, and now I got the wrong set of people watching me. So that's the only thing that I felt like I could have taken it away, as to be somewhat fair, but not to be fair on our opinions, but to be fair on something he need to do for himself, because he got to sleep in it. And that's it.
I can confirm to you, from what I've been told from an inside source, that he has been clean. Obviously, he's been in jail. He doesn't have to remain clean, but he has. And also that he is taking therapy. So that's something that they should have, I felt they should have mentioned. Calvin, why they didn't mention that in the closing arguments? No,
They should have mentioned that. And I think that's one of the things that we talk about. As you go through these trials, you got so many different fires that you're trying to put out, so much stuff you're trying to fight. And Queen said something that I think touched a nerve with me. And I always tell people, and there's a recent argument between Jim Jones and Nas, and there's a difference, right? Puffy, if you're listening to me now, there's a difference between being relevant and being an inspiration.
Come on.
You're an inspiration for a lot of people. You're an inspiration to me.
Yeah.
Watching a black man control and run his own music empire.
Mm-hmm.
You're inspiration to a lot of us. So remember, that crown that you wear is heavy. It's heavy.
That's
it
right.
comes with a lot.
That's
and
right.
you don't let a lot of people down. But you still, your story is never the worst thing that you've ever been accused of doing.
Come on.
Your story is, can you get up from it?
You better tell them.
And that's the challenge that you have now. Puffy, you always tell us that you're him, right? There's a song called I'm Him. You said you Timothy Hernandez, right? So if you're him, rise from this, king. If you're a king,
Just like that.
Ask for forgiveness for what you did to Cassie. Ask God for forgiveness for what you've done wrong. Real kings rise. So remember, you may be in a dark place right now, but ask God for forgiveness.
That's
and whether
it.
y'all agree with me or not, God does forgive.
Yes, he do.
And I wish that this man seeks that forgiveness. I hope he makes amends. And I don't wish the worst on nobody, regardless of what they did. And that's just my message to you, Mr. Combs.
Well,
I also wanted to, before we go further, everybody that, because I know all of you guys are content creators, if I'm not mistaken, please feel free to share in the chat your YouTube handles if you can, so we can be able to support you the way you come and supported us. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I say that.
Thank you.
Okay, Henny, you were saying. Go ahead.
I hope he realizes that he has wealth beyond measure.
Yes.
You know, I've listened to a lot of the interviews that have been done by, Gene Theo, Roger Bonds, things of that nature. And it was said, I don't remember exactly who said it, so I don't want to say this person said it and it wasn't them, that he loved money. The love of money is the root to all evil.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that a lot of our moguls, a lot of the people that have inspired us, a lot of the people who we watched rise up from the late 90s through the early 2000s to today, they were running from what they felt was an impoverished life. And so now they got bigger than life, larger than what they probably ever imagined for themselves. But Puffy's wealth walks into that court every day.
Yes, it does.
His mom,
Yep.
they walk in there, his god brother, they walk in there every single day. That's his wealth. So I hope that he realizes that, because for me, and I know a lot of people try to press me into, Henny, is he guilty or is he innocent? I'm not here for that.
Exactly.
Understand the law.
Yeah.
And looking at the multi-layers of all of this, I'm looking at the fact that this is a man who we watched rise through the ranks and become this big, powerful mogul. that, like you said, Kelvin, inspired all of us. But behind the scenes, this man was going through something, because that's over 2 decades
Yeah.
heard about substance abuse all the way up to when he got arrested. So if he's getting treatment now, if he's getting therapy now, that's a step in the right direction.
Yes.
But now we as a people, we've got to stop being so divided and start looking at what's happening to one of us, not feel like we can't hold someone accountable when they need to be accountable, held accountable, not that we can't call out the fouls, but let's look at what's happening to one of us before it happens to all of us. And then I want to respond to what the T Lounge said about the witnesses and them being questioned multiple times. I had a problem with that because Mia was questioned 31 times. That's 31 times more than what Bana was. And Bana was a self-admitted heavy substance abuser back then, and she wasn't questioned that much. So it does bring into question what was going on behind closed doors.
That's right.
It does. So I find it, a couple of things, if you going back and you say, okay, we're going back to 2004 and we're in 2025, and you were a person that self-admittedly had some substance issues, I can understand you having to be questioned multiple times. But 31 times is excessive for anyone.
Is extremely excessive. And in all of this that we're discussing, and we all can see, I can't remember who mentioned with their third eye, but we all can kind of see what's coming down. Oh, was you, Mel?
No, I think that was me. I always say third eye because
okay. Okay, yeah. So with the third eye, we all can kind of see ahead to a lot of the things that have been happening in our community that we kind of just swept, and I'm getting a little emotional, swept under the rug. And that goes for every party involved. And all of the forgiving that Diddy needs to ask for, he also needs to really, really go before the Most High and ask for forgiveness for what he's done to himself.
That's right.
Even beyond what he did to Cassie. And those young women need to as well, what they did to themselves. There is an accountability meeting that needs to happen in our community that you have to kind of sit with yourself and really ask yourself some serious questions, because there's a lot of things that we have allowed to, happen amongst us that, we've excused away. There's so many different instances I could think of with my homegirls, with myself, having going on vacations, whatever, the drinks involved, because it doesn't have to be these elaborate designer beyond our realm narcotics. We could just talk about alcohol use in certain contexts. Oh yes, that would be under coercion, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And the things that people have accepted. Oh, girl, you got him. Oh, you was able to get him. Oh, you got what from him? And all of these things on both ends, two sides of a coin. We have to flip these coins and really, really talk about it, because we have been playing games for a long time. And it seems like, Judgment Day is here.
You know what, sister, and I don't want to chime in, but it's one of those things I have to. When you look at what's happening in our communities, and you mentioned a lot of stuff we talk about. It reminds me of something that Jay Prince said in his book, The Art and Power of Respect. And he talks about how he did not drink or smoke because he always wanted to be in his right mind when he made decisions. And it was important enough to him not to drink and smoke weed because he wanted to be in his right mind when he made decisions. And sometimes when we get money and we get power, we get influence, we start drinking a little bit. We start drinking better liquor. If you're doing drugs, now you can do better drugs. So a lot of people in today's society, we're partaking in these little bitty things that when you have a lot of money, they can really become, big problems. I have people questioning me all the time. You mean you never Try weed, you never. Nah, I don't do nothing. Because I grew up in a community that when crack first hit the street, I had a front row seat to it. And I ain't gonna lie, it scared the shit out of me. I'm still scared to this day because I saw it take a 250-pound bodybuilder and turn him into Pookie from New Jack City in 6 months.
Yeah.
Scared the hell out of me. And it may not be that drastic of a change, but
Correct.
as a community, we have to start talking about the sipping, the drinking, the pill popping, and the behavior that our men and our women are involved in.
That's right.
It's killing us as a culture.
That's right.
And not just the substance use, the way that we give each other high fives for taking advantage of each other on both sides.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't want to say too much, but I will say that from inside information, maybe I shouldn't. Anyway, Diddy does have a laptop in prison or in jail, and he does tune into our channels. I'll leave it at that, but I know for a fact that there's a possibility he's going to see this video if he's not watching now. So this is by design in a way. I don't want to say too much, but we're here, Calvin, to give him a little defense.
Yeah, man.
To show from your perspective what could have been presented at court, and I think you've done a hell of a job, brother.
Hey, man, you know, I tell you, one of the reasons why I do what I do is because as I talk about the situation with the drugs and seeing the explosion of crack in America, I lived in a neighborhood in Dallas where we had a guy that had a direct California connect through relatives, and the dope came to Dallas, Texas, through my community, through my neighborhood I grew up in. And in the neighborhood I grew up in, we had the first Crip set in the city because of that situation. And so when I talk about these things, I understand that the way that drugs affect people, the things that it makes you do, it changes you, it turns you into something that you're not. We're meant to be kings. We were not meant to be controlled by any substances. And see, some people forget that. We have to carry ourselves as kings.
Correct.
And especially when you get that crown like Puffy got right now, very influential, very popular, very powerful, and he worked hard. He made a lot of smart decisions. He took a lot of gambles. I still remember when he got fired from Uptown and he put all that stuff of Biggie's video on a damn credit card just to make it look like Biggie was larger than life. And guess what? It worked out for him. So guys like that, remember, you're not just here to be relevant. You're here to inspire. Continue to inspire. And don't give up despite the situation you're in. This is only chapter 1 of your book. You get the right to end it, regardless of what happens.
Yeah,
that's what I got to say.
Other people need to be held accountable too in their own ways, not taken away from anybody that may have felt like they were a victim, not taken away from anybody that may have said that they weren't a victim, whatever the case may be. But you have to hold yourself accountable too. You have to hold yourself accountable and say to myself, you know what I need to do? I need to put me first and not money, not nobody's money, not nobody's tongue, not nobody's mouth. And on that side of it, I know some people are going to say, but wait a minute, but you don't know the situation people in. You don't know what it is. You don't know that. It's not our business to know their situation. They got to know their situation and realize a way to get out of it as well, so that they don't be mistreated like that on the other side, to be used as far as coercion with somebody's money or somebody's wealth or, you know, any kind of publicity they can get from a person. They have to also be held accountable. And that's where people don't know how to draw that particular line, because they only see the name victim. You got to understand, everybody is a victim, including the one that victimized. That's where we have problems at, because people don't want to see what the truth is. The truth start with a T, and it damn sure for me end with an H. And sometimes I'll put an S on it. Truths. And you got to understand stuff like that. And that's what people don't like to do. And they'll say, well, you act like you don't like women. No, women don't like women. You act like you don't like men. Hell no, men don't like men. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the truth. You hold yourself accountable. I'll hold myself accountable. And then we can get along accountable together.
That's so true. So true. Go ahead, that girl.
No, I was saying you better come on with the truth, because see, I know a lot of people, you know, I do speak a lot about DV. Okay, I do have my own story of overcoming, but one of the things that I tell people is part of my healing was a healthy accountability.
That's right there.
Being able to sit and say, you know what, you saw that red flag.
That's right.
You know what, you were too focused on trying to make peace instead of focusing on leaving. You know what, you stayed too long. I had to sit and own that. And in this situation, when people say there's no victims, yes, there are. Everybody is a victim in this situation, including Diddy.
That's
They're a
right.
victim. Okay,
Thank you.
whether they're a victim of someone else's doing or a victim of their own. But before you can even start saying, well, this was someone else's doing, you have to first look at you and hold yourself accountable for what you allowed, because people only do what you allow them to do.
Yeah.
So when you start talking about getting into those spaces, you also have to go into what was going on with you at that time, that you
Correct.
were so low on self-love, self-worth, self-value, that you gave it away to somebody else. If it's to say that he had that much power, that much control over you, where were you at in your journey that the door was open for that? And that's not victim blaming. That's having to go through healing. That's having to do the work. That's going through trauma healing. Like, people don't understand, you, in order for you to really heal, first of all, if you are a Black person in America, no offense to anybody else, you have PTSD by nature. Okay, we're traumatized already.
Yeah.
So we need trauma healing already in order for us to deal with it.
And
So
you know what
until we can start having those conversations, and we're working as a people, I see it. We're working as a people. We're on a panel right now talking about therapy, something that was taboo when I'm quite sure all of us were growing up, because that's not something that our elders pushed and talked about to us about therapy, because there was the uncle or the cousin that was put in the back room, but they didn't go to therapy. You understand? So there's a mirror that has to be held up to all parties involved in this situation, in order for everyone to walk out of this clean, morally, spiritually, ethically. Those are personal things. But again, to go back to this case, until we can have these conversations on even a larger magnified scale, people are going to continue to get caught up in the very thing that we always get caught up in: emotion. And we're as a people to see the plot and the plan that is being used against one person that can affect the masses.
Yes, and I have a question. Donald Trump. Everybody's saying that he is going to pardon Diddy if he gets out. What are the odds that he's going to even be able to do that? Do you think that the current crisis that we're in, this World War III, might stop him if he, as far as having time to do that?
No, I'll tell you, it doesn't take much time for him to decide to pardon Diddy if he wanted to do that. And there is a chance that he might do that for reasons that people don't understand, that I'm going to actually make clear to you. Diddy is a man of power, influence, that probably has had relationships with multiple women.
Yeah.
And at times, Trump feels like that people with power, influence, that have the ability to be around multiple women are sometimes brought into things and that they shouldn't be brought into.
Right.
And some people have to remember, it's not always color. Sometimes it's income. So when you see a powerful man like this get charged or overcharged based on how you see it, Trump wants to make sure that that doesn't happen. He wants to send a message that you don't charge men of influence with stuff like this. So there's a very good chance that he might pardon Puffy. And then people have to remember, despite our current feelings about Mr. Trump, at one time he had an excellent relationship with hip hop. Let's be honest.
Do you think, you know what, Calvin, I want to ask you a question, and you know I'm always off the Richter scale here. But do you think by any chance that Trump would consider not pardoning Diddy, possibly because he know if he pardon him, he gonna shoot up and can take over his spot to an extent?
I don't think that. I don't think that.
Here's another question.
Trump like a Teflon. His people, one thing I'll say about his people, and we can get mad at them all they want, they loyal to him. They are loyal to him to a fault. And he might pardon Puffy because he doesn't want to see men of influence power, and money like himself get charged with this kind of stuff. And there are plenty of his friends that are men of money, power, and influence that may look at this case and say, you know what he's doing, I done that 20 times.
That's what I was going to ask. Look, so if he pardons him, okay, because if he's found guilty, right, it sets a legal precedent, right? People can use it just like they're using Kelly versus the United States government. People could use that in a trial. So if Trump pardons Diddy, will they still be able to say Fat Joe is getting a RICO? Will they still be able to use this case that in the Diddy versus the United States trial and the Kelly versus United States trial against other people still, but once he gets pardoned?
They could, but I think there's going to be less of an appetite to do something like this if that happens.
Okay.
And when I say less of an appetite, even with Fat Joe, man, I'm not trying to be funny, but I feel sorry for some of these celebrities because I kind of know how it is when you work for somebody that got a lot of money and you are involved with somebody and then you cut the money off to that person that you're involved with. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff starts coming out about what you did. And when they were around, where when you look at it, you go like, you mean to tell me he was doing all this with all these kids and you didn't say nothing? And this happened 5 or 6 or 7, 8 years ago. But now you want to say something because you want to sue them? But you didn't have enough more of a moral compass. He's doing this with these kids and you just decided you were going to look the other way and not do anything about it. We got to start opening our eyes, man. We got to be honest with each other, right?
Yeah, true. Very
I don't care how much money involved. If I see somebody doing something to a kid, I'm gonna say something.
Right.
Exactly.
Probably gonna do something to him.
But you know what? This case, I'm telling you, people are getting lost in this case, man.
Yeah.
I told you, this case is not a good movie. If this was in a movie form, it was a movie, it wouldn't have been that interesting. It's okay, but it was not that interesting of a movie, man. I'm telling you. So the most important parts of this movie is the very beginning and the very end. The middle wasn't that good. So I'm telling you, I've been there from day one. I might joke outside, but I know this case in my head back and forwards. Okay. I've been there since jury selection. That's what gave me my first thing to understand. After the first thing, that's the most important thing in this is the opening statements. This is where I got to understand what's going on in this case, just like them closing arguments. And one thing that stuck out to me, so I knew what it's like reading a book. It's the introduction to a book. So I seen what the prosecution was saying, these 20 years of crimes, and this one night where he takes a bodyguard and a weapon in the middle of the night and he gets Mia, and then she brings him to find Cassie. He doesn't find her, he doesn't stop there, and then he brutally beats her and Okay, cool. So they already set the tone, and when they set their tone. But when the defense came in, they said something that set the tone for me. They said, listen to me, and I'm going to read this to you because I want to get this clear. They said that the government started their opening statement by telling you this is about a 20-year racketeering influence corrupt organization act enterprise that he committed with his apparent trusted inner circle. The only people in this courtroom who will tell you that they participated in, knew about, or came to an agreement to participate in a racketeering enterprise are the prosecutors. Not one witness will get into this courtroom, get into that box, and will take that witness stand and tell you that they are part of a racketeering influence corrupt organizations act enterprise. And the reason is simple, because there's not. And that was the thing that stuck out to me, because the prosecution was saying anything but the case. I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch what y'all going out for. And this is one thing that they said, and this is one thing that it looks like exactly as how it said. Nobody got up there to say that they was a part of no RICO, no ex-trafficking. Even the supposed toots, they said they was dancers or whatever else. Even Cassie and Jane called them entertainment. So we just got to do this right. I didn't see nobody in there. And it seems like those people that testified against him have more love for Diddy than some people that actually hate him. Straight. You know what I'm saying? They got love for him still. Cassie do too. She said that.
That's a lot that I found interesting. And for me, you know, I went in and, you know, people can attest to this. I went in looking to see, did he get thrown under the jail? Right. I sat there for a moment. Those opening statements that Uda just mentioned was imperative for me. When I heard it, I said, wait a minute, let me take a step back and see where this is going.
Facts.
And it went nowhere. For me, third generation Harlem, you're not going to come to me and tell me a story about someone and I don't get to hear from you mentioning all of these names
Right.
that are still alive and well, and you don't call any of them. The 2 escorts you call onto the stand did their dirt in the state that they lived in. Can we at least hear from the people that got transported?
Right.
And then your 2 escorts don't even corroborate each other.
And then I hear incidents where Cassie was too zooted and Diddy said, no, we can't. There was multiple incidents of that. I'm making note of all of this.
And it's one thing that people, even that we watch the case, we always got to remember that there is a distrust of the federal government.
Of course.
By a lot of people, and not just black people. There's a lot of white folks that do not trust the federal government. And when you have a jury of folks, when you have a jury of that many people in that situation, some people will look at this situation and go, you know what? They're doing too much. And all it takes is one. All it takes is one to say they're doing too much, and I'm not bending and I'm not breaking. I'm not voting guilty. That's all it takes is one. And we got to be aware that sometimes there are situations where the government is going to try to do too much.
And I'll say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Those New Yorkers have seen more federal crimes committed on the subway train than they have in that courtroom.
There we go. There we go, right there. And I can't say nothing back to that one.
Well,
so you guys were in the courtroom along with me. What did you think about it when Combmes said that, he was #1 on the Forbes list? What did you think about that?
Especially after she was upset and going back and forth about saying that they targeted him. For her to make that statement, I found that to be wild.
Wow, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're trying everything they got to try.
Question for you.
How they doing, man? They trying what they got to try. Good question.
So you were saying it only takes one, right? So we know that if one comes back, it's a hung jury. If they can't bend them, can't break them, they don't come to a consensus, it's a hung jury. At that point, with the Rule 29 or that they have in place, the judge reserved on that, which means that he has to wait until after the jury comes back with their verdicts. If they come back a hung jury, does he then still have to give his ruling on the Rule 29, or does it only come out when they're guilty?
Well, what's going to happen if they're hung jury, then they just do it over. He doesn't come out with his, that's over.
Okay.
And that's the issue that the government is going to have. If they don't get him this first time, it's going to be hard to get him. Because then even your witnesses go, man, they did all this. They took a couple of months doing this and they couldn't convict him. And so, and then the defense has gotten a free run at how you're going to present your case. And as a defense, you know who's going to testify against you. So it's like you can't run the same play on me twice and have success. Right. You're going to have less success that second time you run that play.
And then also the jury that they would get now has watched this whole trial too.
Yes. And so that's the issue. I think they're aiming to try to maybe hang the jury. And if they do that, they bought Puffy more time. They've done their job. And people have to remember, we have to think about these things. Like Puffy has enough money to keep fighting him. He has enough money to keep fighting him. But does the public and does the federal government have the appetite to continue to go after him?
That's true.
And in addition to that, what if he has to go through this again? Then his attorneys are going to actually try to get a motion to get him bond again, at least house arrest until, you know, the conclusion of the second trial if they try it again. So that could be a game changer for him.
Mark
I
says, will he get bail?
forget
Sorry.
about that part. They forget that there's a whole Rule 29 that's dangling, and people. I hear a lot of people saying, "I don't think the judge is going to give him. I don't think the judge is going to go for a mistrial." We honestly don't know what Judge Arun, a Submarinian, is going to do. I've watched him. When I'm thinking he's going to sway this way, he'll sway the other way. I have to say, for the most part, he has been fair. People may not have liked what he's called when he's called it, but I feel like he's been fair in calling a lot of the things that he's called. So we really don't know if he's going to say, you know what, my ruling is coming in. Okay, you guys say guilty. All right. Rule 29, I say acquit. We don't know.
So listen, Mel, did you have something to do at 5:30?
It's all right. I'm okay.
Okay.
JC talks. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. JC Talks Trial says, question, will the jury know that 3 predicate acts were dropped?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure they know that.
Okay.
That was part of the you know, the big deal in terms of giving them their instructions. They're going to know that. And so with that being said, like I said, if they can hang this jury as a defense attorney, that's a win for you, because it allows you to put the ball back in the government's court. And I know the government has nothing but time and resources, but do they have the appetite to go after somebody like a Puffy Combs again after they were not successful the first time? In addition to that, if you went after him twice and did not get him, what does that say about you as a prosecutor, right? That also is career. It kind of hurts your career when you go after somebody like this twice and you don't get them. So you got to start those things start to come into play. And then if they don't find him guilty, what if Trump comes out and say, you know, what they're doing to Mr. Combs is not right? The next thing you know, you have that outside pressure from him happening. And he'll say and do whatever he wants to do. So you got things like that you got to think about. There's a lot to think about.
Oh, I have one more question. Just hit my head. One more question. He has no criminal record. How does that play? Because I know a lot of times when you go through the federal system, I've watched people, they try to career criminal you based off of your state charges. But no state charges, no federal charges. This would be his first time being convicted. How would that play out if he were convicted?
Now, Mel, we had a conversation. Did he have a gun conviction for a gun possession at one point?
That's what rumor has it. He was.
Oh, go ahead, Mel.
No, go ahead. If you know the outcome, someone did mention that, but go ahead.
As far as I know, Shine was the one who ended up going to for that crime.
Okay. And this is the issue. When you have a criminal history, the federal government moves on this thing called the point system, right?
Right.
Each prior felony gives you an additional 3 points. Mm-hmm. Each prior misdemeanor, if you have sentenced to more than 100 days, gives you like 1 point. And so he doesn't have a lot of points, but the fact that the conviction starts at such a high level, the offense level is so high, that's where you can get all your years at. So that could be a problem if he gets convicted, and because of that. And then sometimes some of the behaviors in committing the criminal offense can actually get your number up a little higher. But like I said, as a defense attorney, if I can't get him acquitted, I want a hung jury. And I think part of the reason why he didn't testify is because if you think that they did not get to where it was beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't want to put Mr. Combs up there and then open a hornet's nest against him. You want to put it on the jury that, hey, we feel so confident at the weakness, put it like that, their case as a government was weak as 1-pack Kool-Aid. Y'all know when we make Kool-Aid, right? You got to put 2 packs in there, right? You can't put that 1-pack Kool-Aid stuff.
I have some now.
That's what I'm saying, right? So it's weak as 1-pack Kool-Aid. and you want to
That's funny. That's funny.
you want to put the idea out that you're so confident that he don't have to say anything. That was weak Kool-Aid over there. Y'all shouldn't drink that weak Kool-Aid. It was so weak. We don't have to put our guy out there. Come on, y'all. Sometimes defense attorneys want to convey that level of confidence to a jury.
Yeah.
Especially when you have somebody like Mr. Combs, who really you're scared to call up there because you don't know what's going to happen when you get up there. Because of all the potential stuff that the government has and the discovery that they have against it. So that's why they don't put him up there. Yeah. And you don't tell him ahead of time that he's not going to testify, because as the government is putting the case on against him, you want them focused on the fact that we don't know if Mr. Combs is going to get called up there or not. So you want them not just preparing for their daily case, you want them preparing for their future of potentially having Mr. Combs testify or other witnesses testify. So that's why you don't tell the government in the beginning if you're going to call your client or not, or if you're going to call witnesses. That's why initially they were saying it's going to take us 2 weeks to put on our case. And then they said it's going to take us 3 days, 2 or 3 days to put on our case. And then all of a sudden, we're going to rest without calling in the witnesses. That's a tactic and a strategy that defense attorneys like myself use when we have situations like that.
I have a question that has to do with why do you think the defense did not bring up anybody? I mean, they could have brought up his grandma, or his the high school teacher.
No, you don't do that.
Nobody.
Number one, you can't character bolster. You can't bolster character. There's an evidence rule that you cannot do that character bolstering like that. Number one. Number two, there's an evidence rule against that. Number one. Number two, you don't do that because number two, you don't want to actually have to worry about what's going to get questioned of that particular witness. There's a number of things that a teacher or grandmother may know that may not be good things. And so you want, if you think that they ended their case weekly, you just go on that. You stop there. And that's what you should do.
I want to say something to that too. When she asked that question, I was saying to myself, no way. Because I think we talked about it last time, Calvin and Mel, when I kind of touched on a little bit of Anton Massey, the young man that was just captured over in New Orleans. And I was just literally, I did a reaction video on his auntie. And I'm saying to myself, people, white people, black people, especially us black ones, will we please learn to keep our mouth closed? Because you just tainted the whole case. You threw him under the bus. You did not defend him. You actually you might as well move in with the state. His auntie got on social media and she basically, I said, oh my goodness, you just tore him a new one when all we want him to do is come in. And now that he's in, you go on one of the top news stations and talk against him, but you feel you're talking with him. Be quiet. Don't talk don't talk. Because it doesn't help. That's why they didn't bring anybody up. I wouldn't have either. Like Calvin said, he pretty much got a case. They don't have anything. Not what they think they have.
Yeah. And so sometimes that's just a tactic that we use. Like we said, if we feel like one pet Kool-Aid, we tell people don't drink that. That's just what it is.
Yep.
So that you want to say they have a weak case and you want to have the confidence to show people that you believe that their case is weak. Yep.
Well, thank you, Mel. Thank you, Calvin. Thank you, T Lounge. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, everybody, for this time and space that we've shared. It's been wonderful. I appreciate you giving from both perspectives because we're not seeing that a lot. It's either one side or the other. So I appreciate you explaining everything. I also appreciate the confirmations because I'm not a lawyer. So I've been out here like ringing alarms and saying things, and you were saying stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been saying that. Oh my God, I've been saying. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with all of us.
I always tell people, I don't get paid to think like I think. I get paid to think how they think.
That's it.
And so you got to start thinking outside the box. That's why I'll watch what the other side is doing. I'll watch conservative radio. I'll watch conservative TV. Because I want to know what they're thinking and how they're thinking about it. Because you got to understand your opponent.
Uh-huh.
That's what
You
you do,
got to
Cal.
understand. And sometimes we go, I wouldn't dare watch. I wouldn't dare go over there. Nah, man, I want to sit with him sometime, have a conversation with him.
That's what you do with them, Calvin. What you do with them is you get paid to make them think.
Yeah.
You get paid to make them think.
Bingo. And we got to start.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just want to ring the alarm, right? But sometimes we got to sit and listen to the other side.
That's
because
right.
Sometimes we may not like them, but sometimes we may agree with 10 or 20% of what they're talking about.
Right. Right.
So think about it.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Mel
have
and
one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, honey.
no, I was just gonna say Mel and Tea Lounge. I don't know, Queen, are you down at the courthouse too?
No, I'm not. I'm actually in Florida.
Oh, I'll be in Florida on the 4th, honey. I'm leaving. Verdict or not, I'm going home. I've been up here.
Wait a minute, so we might
my
need to talk a
children,
little.
my mother, my bed, the backyard. I miss home. All right.
So we might need to talk from around here, so maybe we all can get together again. Because I'm right here down in the south side of the sunny state.
Okay.
Of hell at times, but we're dealing with it.
I'm southeast, so yes, definitely. You can inbox me official that girl Henny on IG.
Okay,
Mel
I'll get you.
Lounge, I may or may not be down there tomorrow. Them trees, that pollen is eating me up. Okay, I'm congested, sinus congestion. So I don't know if I'm coming down there tomorrow or not, but I'll be tapping in with y'all to find out what's the goings on. Okay, if I don't. But
Hey Mel, is there a lot of people down there like right now at the end?
Oh, it's a circus again. It's a circus again. And that's I'm gonna be there. But my question is to Calvin, in cases like this, how long do you anticipate the deliberation? I know that that's a hard question, but
yeah, you just don't know. It depends on how they're receiving this information.
Yeah.
First of all, with the case being so long, you want them to go through all of the evidence. I mean, it's going to take, to me, reasonably at least a week or longer, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of evidence that you have to go through. You want them taking each and every charge seriously. And so, but once again, it could be a while. This thing could go on a while because the government put a lot of evidence out there, and there's a lot of charges. And I also suspect the reason why the government dropped some of the allegations is to try to bring some clarity to the jury, because when you overcharge things and you charge them with so many different instances, sometimes you create a situation where the jury can get confused and not understand some things.
Right.
And sometimes you can go right over their head and you can cost yourself a verdict in your favor by doing some of those things. So I would suspect that they dropped some of those charges to try to simplify what they were trying to do.
Mhm.
But you guys have a wonderful rest of Sunday evening. I appreciate this. This was a dope conversation. I love being a part of dope spaces like this. So thank you again for having me, Mel, and we'll do lunch before I leave.
All right, I'm going to put this together in a live format, and I'm going to invite all of you guys. So trust and believe me on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to try to do something. I would love to do something with everybody together on the panel, and we do a stream. And I know Mel has been talking about doing that, and we're going to make that happen at some point, hopefully with this case. But in the future, down the line on something, I think we all need to get together. I think we all have great chemistry, if I'm correct. I think we're doing all a good job, great job. So I think we got chemistry. So we need to make that 2-pack Kool-Aid and make it sweet enough.
Well, listen, I got my Kool-Aid. Every time you say Kool-Aid, I'm gonna have my Kool-Aid. Next time it's gonna be red instead of green.
All right.
Hey, I know.
You making me want some Kool-Aid now. But all right, y'all have a good
thank you guys. This has been a great show. Calvin, you want to close it out?
All I got to say is, hey, look, I want y'all to pay attention to everything. Like I said, don't be surprised if it takes a while for this jury to come back with all the evidence. And don't be surprised if you see 1 or 2 people that will not convict Diddy, because you got some people that don't trust the government. Now, I don't know how these people feel personally, but it's not beyond the realm to get 1 or 2 jurors that decide I don't trust the government or not enough, and I'm not going to find this man guilty of a RICO. So let's see what happens. I've been wrong. Sometimes you don't know. It all depends on the jury that you get. But let's keep watching, and let's keep watching Mel, and let's do this again if we have the opportunity. And everybody who's watching, we do this every Sunday, 2 p.m. We're going to be doing it next week again. So y'all tune in and keep this thing rolling.
Hey, Hold on.
All right, thank you for having me. I'll talk with
Thank
you all
you.
tomorrow, and I'll see the rest of you all when I see you. Okay, peace.
I
All
see you
right.
later.
Thank you, guys.
So
Thank
we're
you,
gonna are we gonna try to do something during the week when the verdict comes out, Mel and
And if
Calvin?
the verdict does come out, we may jump on right after the verdict, the night after the verdict. So
Okay.
let's
So-
try to, we'll adjust to that depending on when the verdict comes out. But I would imagine that everybody try to be ready to where if the verdict comes out, we all jump on again. All right, y'all?
All right, so y'all keep, make sure y'all have all notifications clicked on y'all like thingamajiggy so that you get notified that we're gonna be jumping up. Okay, y'all. So thank you guys, thank everybody. This is Mel watching the world signing out, and also DJ Genesis signing out, Queen signing out, Calvin Johnson signing out. Much love, everyone. Peace.
Take care, y'all.